I always have enough Novocaine pumped into my mouth and my jaw and my gums to freeze my face for a day, literally. If people speak to me during that day, I never smile because I can't. In fact, I never communicate. People think I've gone mad.
This is Talk Sport. We are the two mites, and I'm delighted to say it's time to say a very, very good morning in a very wet and manky London to Mr. Mike Porky Parry. Very good morning to you, Mr. Parry.
Very good morning to you, Mike. That's a very colloquial word, isn't it, manky? I don't really like it, to be honest. No, it's not an English word.
It's not a word I've used. What do you mean it's not an English word?
Well, it's not an English word. It's not part... You wouldn't find it in the English dictionary, for instance.
I'm sure you would find it in the English dictionary.
No, you wouldn't, honestly. You won't find that word in the English dictionary.
Well, there are many words used on this show which are not in the dictionary. Many of them are used, and most of them are used by you.
Well, yes, but most of them are words to describe of the moment or of the situation.
For example, there was one last night, which I'm not going to repeat, that you used in reference to that Picasso painting.
The penicular structure.
Yes, I didn't want you to say it again.
No, you will find that in the dictionary.
Penicular.
Yeah, penicular, of course you will. Yeah, absolutely. It means prominent. And structure, of course, you know the meaning of that. But you won't find the word manky, and I don't like the word manky.
Why don't you like it?
Well, it sounds cheap and...
it's a word I've been using for years and years and years. I haven't used it that much recently.
Manky, to me, is a...
Just very bleh, is the way I would describe
manky. Is a wet, sodden, full of holes, flea-bitten mattress lying on the floor in a damp and broken down wreck of a building. That's manky to me.
Well, I'm sorry that it reminds you of your upbringing, but at the end of the day, manky to me can describe a great number of things.
It doesn't convey,
as most words can.
Doesn't convey great images. But getting back to tonight's results, what a shocker, eh?
Well, what a bizarre set of results.
Arsenal?
I mean, who would have bet that Crystal Palace would win, Swansea would win, Watford would beat Arsenal, Chelsea and Liverpool, a draw was, I suppose, always on the cards.
Yes.
But very bizarre. The Oxford English Dictionary does have a definition of manky, by the way.
Mm-hmm. No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
What does it say?
I'm looking at it right here.
But you're looking at the online version. You will not find it.
Doesn't matter.
I've got the Oxford English Dictionary, the full works complete at home, a volume, and it's not in there.
The English language gets updated every year. Well, the Oxford English Dictionary gets updated every year. Yours is probably from about 1985.
What does the online version say?
It says manky refers to something inferior or worthless, or dirty and unpleasant.
Well, there you go.
As in the man in the manky Macintosh.
There you go.
However, inferior and worthless is another usage of the word. So.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about it. I've never used the word manky to describe somebody's inferior and worthless.
It's from the French, monkey.
Monkey, which means...
From the Latin, which is in fact mankus.
Broken.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Mutilated.
That's right, mutilated, broken. Yeah, I knew that. I studied Latin, of course.
Did you?
Yeah.
Maybe I should give you a quiz in Latin.
You don't need to, don't worry.
We haven't worked out what the quiz is going to be yet this
Well, we will. Don't worry, we will before the end of the show today. No problem at all.
Before the end of today's show.
Now, what have I forgotten so far?
Hey?
Rabbits! See?
I don't know why you think that's of any interest to anyone.
Of course it's interest to everybody.
You're like some sort of demented bloke that's just walked out of an asylum.
No!
And then you go back in on the 2nd of the month.
Would you agree it's the 1st of February?
It is the 1st of February.
Thank you. What? Well, it's the start of a new month.
No, until you started doing this on the radio show.
April is the cruelest month, eh?
Until you started doing this on the 1st of every month. I never knew anyone that ever did that.
Well, in that case,
maybe
you've
it's
had...
a northern thing.
What?
Is it a northern thing?
No, it's not a northern thing. It's an English thing. Everybody does it.
It's not. I've never done it.
By the way, on this day in 1606, guess who got it?
I don't know.
Guy Fawkes.
Guy Fawkes?
Yeah, Guy Fawkes.
What, you mean was this the day he was hanged, drawn and quartered?
Well, you see, this is what's so interesting.
And then had his guts dragged across London.
No, this is what's so interesting. You're thinking of, my name is William Wallace,
No,
right?
I'm not.
Yeah, he was hung, drawn and quartered.
Yeah, so was Guy Fawkes.
No, he wasn't. I'll tell you about this in a minute. No, it wasn't. What happened to William Wallace was he was done in the Chamber of Westminster, in the Palace of Westminster.
Yeah.
They then tied ropes to each of his two ankles.
Yeah.
And then tied the other end of the ropes to two horses upon which two soldiers were riding.
Yes.
And they dragged him naked from Westminster to Smithfield.
Well, I don't think he cared whether he was naked or not.
Sorry?
I don't suppose he cared whether he was naked
well,
or not, considering he'd been quartered.
No, he hadn't by then. They dragged him to Smithfield, and that's where they hung, drew and quartered him. But of course, if you're being dragged behind two white horses all the way from Westminster to Smithfield...
I bet they got there quicker than you do it today.
I bet they did. But there wouldn't have been a lot of skin left on his back by the time he got there. That's the only problem.
That's a very unpleasant image.
It is shocking, but that's what they did. Anyway, Guy Fawkes, who decided that wasn't necessarily his fate, because what happened to Guy Fawkes was, we have historical record of the fact that when he was first arrested, he had to sign an order, and we've seen his signature, Guido Fawkes, okay?
That's right.
Then after 4 days on the rack, and a few hot irons into certain parts of his anatomy.
Why are you so fascinated by torture?
I'm not fascinated by torture.
You don't like me using the word manky, but you're quite happy to describe the most hideous and ghastly kind of ways of killing people.
No. What happened then was he was then made to sign his own execution order.
Yeah.
And you can see
from
his death warrant. You can see from the scribbly, spidery where he signed that, of course, all his fingers have been broken on the rack and all that kind of stuff. So it's very difficult to get hold of a pen.
A bit like you're writing on the Churchill thing, right?
Not at all.
You remember that piece of paper that you put out claiming, look at all this research I did for the Churchill quiz.
Well, I did.
People thought it was the ramblings of a madman.
No, they didn't know.
And as it gets towards the bottom of the page, it gets more and more random.
No.
As if you started at the top of the page in completely compass mentis.
Not at all.
But by the end of it, presumably after several glasses of wine, the script starts to trail off at the end of each line.
Not at all. Anyway, so Guido decided that wasn't
January the 31st, by the way.
What?
He was killed.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Well, that was yesterday.
No. It's in the same 24-hour period, don't worry.
Well, you said on this day.
Yeah.
The day's the 1st of February. You just said rabbits to me.
Yeah.
It's no longer the 31st of January.
No, it's the 1st of February.
Yeah.
That's why I said rabbits.
Yeah, so it's not the 31st.
No, it was
so you said on this day.
No,
so that's wrong.
Within this 24-hour period. So anyway, old Guido, who decided he wasn't going to go in for that bit of it, as he went
bit of it?
Dragged behind the horses and all that.
What, you mean you didn't fancy that?
Didn't fancy that at all. Also,
surprising,
they cut off your genitals, put them in a pan, and then boil them in front of your face, which is not a very pleasant thing to have to experience, or witness. So what he did is, as he got up on the scaffold, he said, "Thank you very much," and threw himself off head first. Broke his neck and died instantly. That was Guido Fawkes.
Right.
But guess who else did that?
Did they not just chop him up anyway, just for good measure?
They may have done. They may have done.
I think
don't
they
know.
did.
Did they? Okay, yeah. But guess who else did that in a flush of?
He dived off the scaffold.
Yeah, but he did it with a bit more skill, and that was Dick Turpin.
Really?
Now York Racecourse.
The highwayman.
Yeah, the highwayman. York Racecourse.
I know of it. I've never been there.
Yeah, I've been there. We've done a few shows there. And,
have you?
And I've.
When you say we?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Various people. Myself and Mr. Brazil.
Oh, yeah.
I think Andy and I have done one, Andy Townsend. And because there's a great horse meeting there once a year. You know
horse meeting?
Yeah, a race meeting.
Meeting of horses.
Meeting of horses, that's right, race meeting, yeah. So anyway, old Dick Turpin, there's a certain part of that course, and I've forgotten what it's called now, but it's...
okay.
It's very famous. Very famous, yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's called
It's not Weatherby, though.
No, it's not Weatherby. No,
Weatherby's just up the road, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not far away.
Yeah.
But it's called the something.
And something.
Yeah. Well, I'll look it up in a minute because
this is at a horse meeting.
This is at York Racecourse.
Yeah.
A part of it is called the something. I think it's the Long Straight,
right.
And it's very famous, for being one of the finest bits of sort of racing turf in the world.
Is that why you can't remember what it's
I
called?
can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
And anyway,
it's the biggest racecourse in Britain. It says.
That's right, York. Yeah. What else is it called?
I don't know. I'm trying to find it for
Good
you.
man. So anyway, they put up the scaffolding, right? And Dick Turpin has been banged to rights because he's eventually been caught and tried as a highwayman. And the rope is dangling. So as he's led up the steps to the rope, guess what he does?
I don't know.
Because he was frightened at the guy that he would strangle to death rather than, be hanged.
Yeah.
He leapt off the scaffolding, grabbed the rope, put it round his own neck. And then
jumped off.
And then, yes, that's right, yeah, and hanged himself.
Well, what sort of security did they have at these hangings?
Not much.
Doesn't sound like it was very good at all.
Not much. I mean, you
people just wandering around throwing themselves off things.
Yeah, that's right. You'd have thought that they'd have tied his hands up or something, wouldn't you?
So he couldn't have manacles or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so he couldn't actually,
shocking.
Self-hang.
Yeah, self-hang.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I don't think we've ever.
I've got nothing here that tells me anything about the anything.
Oh well, it must say something.
There's nothing. All it says is that they extended the home straight.
Yes.
In order to make the racecourse round.
Yeah, that's right. But
that's all.
Racecourse is also called the something, and I've forgotten what it's called now.
No.
Like Cheltenham's got several names, hasn't it? Cheltenham Racecourse.
Is it?
It's
well, what's that called?
Presbury Park.
Presbury Park,
isn't it? I think.
It?
Yeah,
well,
I think so.
You told me.
Yeah, but anyway,
you're the expert on horse meetings.
No, I'll find out the name for York Racecourse special meeting. But anyway, I thought that was very interesting. Really, that
really. Well, that's the first quarter of the show gone.
Yeah.
First quarter of the first hour gone. We talked about Dick Turpin.
Yeah.
We've talked about Guy Fawkes.
Yeah.
We've talked also about William Wallace.
Rabbits.
With rabbits.
Yeah.
We haven't yet mentioned Arsene Wenger.
Well,
I think we should probably do that coming up next.
I think you're right.
With the two mics.
I think you're right.
Talk Sport, we are the two mites. There's literally an avalanche of tweets coming in telling you that, of course, it's called the Knavesmire.
Exactly, it is.
Brendan sends one in. Francis has sent one in. Here's one from Donny. Another one from Kenny. Another one from Greenie. From Gary.
Can I say
really,
a big thank you to Talk Sport commentator and all-round good chap, Nigel Pearson, who sent me a personal note saying Knavesmire. Thank you very much, Nigel.
You sure it's Nigel?
I'm sure it's Nigel.
You sure it's not the other Nigel Pearson?
Who?
You know, the ex-manager of Leicester.
No, probably not. It's probably not. I don't know him too well.
No, really?
It will have been Nigel, and I will have worked there with him, so thanks for that one, Nigel. That's great. Yeah, the Knavesmire, and it was on the Knavesmire, which is that straight I'm talking about, where they hanged Dick Turpin,
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Not a very pleasant thing to have happened.
Is there a plaque?
I don't think so. I've never seen a plaque there.
Really?
I used to walk across the course of the hotel on the other side where we used to stay. And
what's the hotel called?
The hotel, I think it was called the Holiday Inn. I think.
The Holiday Inn?
I think. Or the Hilton. No, it was the Hilton. That's right. It began with H, yeah.
Okay.
Do you know what?
According to Moz, right, the big Dick Turpin fell off Moz.
Moz?
Sent a tweet in, yes.
Moz?
Moz, yeah.
Do we know what we call Moz?
Moz was short for Morris, isn't it?
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Short for Morris.
I knew a bloke called Moz once, but he would never reveal what his first name really was.
Oh, yeah?
No.
Well, I don't think it's short for Morris. It must have been.
Don't know. Anyway, please go on.
Well, this guy's called Moz Render, right?
Oh, Moz Render, yeah.
And he says Big Dick Turpin fell off the cart taking him to the Knavesmire, so he never got hung where they said.
Yeah, but I mean, sorry, what happened was...
I don't want to hear the story again.
Well, I can correct it. What happened
you got it wrong, in other words.
No, I didn't get it wrong.
You said he threw himself off.
Yes.
With a rope.
Yes.
This guy says he fell off the cart.
Right, can I just tell you this?
Yeah.
The cart that brings them in is the bit on which you are hanged. You are taken to the gibbet, right, in the cart, then the cart becomes
You will be taken from here
in a
to
cart.
another place in a cart.
In a cart.
Which will also serve as the scaffold.
That's right.
For which you will be hanged by the neck.
That's right.
Until you are dead.
And remember, if you try and throw yourself off the cart before you get there to break your neck, you'll be severely reprimanded.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, Ernie says this. I work with a South African bloke, and he shouts white rabbits on the 1st of every month.
Thank you.
And Mike Parry are both planks.
Well, that's very harsh indeed. Yeah. No, what I was going to say was the cart bit was illustrated in Braveheart, wasn't it? The William Wallace film.
Yeah, really. I don't know that film very well because it's such a terrible film.
Great film.
It's an awful film.
Why?
It's rubbish.
Oh, it's great.
Well, I mean,
film.
of all the great actors that we have in this country, they pick an Australian, right, to do. He's an American Australian, to be fair.
Well, no, he made the film.
William Wallace. Yeah, I know.
No, he made the film. He put the money up.
Well, his Scottish accent was hopeless.
No,
right?
I thought it was very good. I mean,
what would you know?
It was a very anti-English film. It's very pro-Scottish because that's the way that some American people feel.
Well, no, it was a reasonably kind of well put together movie. But it had a terrible cast.
No, it was a brilliant love story. It was a brilliant love story. A man so driven.
I prefer him in Lethal Weapon, to be honest.
So driven. Well, he was a nutter in that as well. But
he wasn't a nutter when he played William Wallace. He was playing historical character.
Yeah. What I'm saying is he's driven so nutty by the fact that his beautiful wife, and girlfriend had been viciously, brutally murdered by the English, right?
Yes.
He decided to eke revenge, and he nearly conquered England in the pursuit of it. He got as far as York, actually.
Yeah.
He invaded as far south over the border to York, and I think he took York. I think he captured York before old Longshanks decided to send the army up and do him in.
Yeah, well, that was probably why.
Yeah, that's right.
Decided to push him further back.
Absolutely.
Anyway, that's enough history. Let's talk about the present day, or in fact yesterday.
Yes.
Because Arsene Wenger, who's now sitting in the stands looking even more morose than he normally does.
Yes.
What a terrible performance from Arsenal.
Well, I tell you what, when you look at all the results last night, and then, of course, there's 3 more games tonight, but, Chelsea are now 9 points clear.
Yes.
And we're nearly down to the last third of the season.
Exactly.
Now, Chelsea at the final whistle last night might have thought lost opportunity, 2 points gone, until they saw the other results.
Yeah.
Because...
Well, nobody made up any ground at all.
Well, not only did nobody make up any ground, they lost ground because Arsenal were never expected to lose at home.
That's true.
To Watford.
Yeah.
So really, even if...
But Spurs drew at Sunderland as well, which was a kind of a strange result, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, Spurs drew at Sunderland, so that means that the gap between Chelsea and Spurs is exactly the same as it was this morning, or yesterday morning.
Yeah.
But the gap between Chelsea and Arsenal, who play each other very soon, is now widened by 2 points because Arsenal's
it's
bizarre...
It's won by 1 point.
Eh?
It's won by 1 point.
No, it's widened by 1 point. That's right. It's widened by 1 point. Yeah, because they drew.
It's widened by 2 points.
No, you're absolutely right.
I mean, you could say it's widened by a factor of -3 because Arsenal should have got 3 points, but I think that's too complicated.
No. It's from the time they started to the time they ended. You're right.
It's
Chelsea
1
1 point more ahead. Yeah, that's absolutely right because of a quite bizarre result.
Yes,
which nobody could have expected.
Although Watford played very well. I mustn't take anything away from Watford.
Well, Watford did play well, but the thing is, Arsenal are supposed to be good enough to make sure Watford don't play well. And also, Watford aren't that good because last time
they haven't
won,
been very good lately.
No, they've been very good. Last time they won was on December the 10th. Unfortunately, that was against Everton. But we won't talk about that because we were a different team then.
That was when Everton weren't very good.
Yeah,
Everton playing tonight, right?
Everton played away at Stoke tonight.
Away at Stoke.
Yeah, and I'm hoping for a result.
On a wet Wednesday night, as they say.
Yeah, that's right. Wet Wednesday night in Stoke. Who fancies that?
Are you going?
No.
Why not?
Because it would be very difficult to get home in time.
Stoke is not far away.
What?
Stoke isn't far away.
What, to get back here for... what time would I have to get back here
You get a train at about 10...
No.
10 o'clock? You get a 10 o'clock train out of Stoke, you'll be back in London before 11:30.
I'm sorry, an impossible logistical nightmare.
It is not. I think you should go.
It is. Well, will you go then if you want to go?
I'm not an Everton fan.
No, and I'm telling you, it's a logistical nightmare. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Now, we've got lots to get on with tonight. We're going to be talking to a very, very interesting guy by the name of Malcolm Nance. Now, I don't know if you remember speaking to him before. I'm not sure that you have done.
Yes.
But he is a guy who knows everything there is to know about counter-terrorism activities, right?
Really?
Because this is a man who
guy's a spook, is he?
Well, he's worked for the CIA. He's worked for U.S. Special Forces.
Are you telling me he's worked for Virginia?
Virginia
who? The CIA.
What?
The CIA.
They don't call it Virginia.
They talk about Virginia.
You mean Langley?
Langley.
They talk about Langley.
Langley.
Yeah, not Virginia.
Well,
you're talking about Virginia Wade then.
No. The guys I've spoken to, they refer to...
Well, Langley is in Virginia.
Virginia.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they do.
No, you're talking absolute rubbish.
Like they talk about MI6s.
All right, well, try not to humiliate. Try not to humiliate yourself or him when you talk to him, right? Because he's been responsible for training people in hostage negotiation.
Hostage negotiations.
He's been responsible for training people in sudden strikes.
Ooh.
He's also trained people at Guantanamo Bay. This guy's been around.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So he's going to tell us basically whether Donald Trump's plan to make America safe again is actually going to work, or whether it's actually going to make America more dangerous. And
is he for?
Not such a good slogan.
Is he for or against the?
I have no idea. I suspect, being a military man, he will have no political view.
Okay, I can tell you something. Which is
why we like to get him on.
I can tell you something. Sorry, talking about secrets and all that.
Yeah. A lot of people agreed with me about Gary Lineker, by the way, last night.
About what?
About the fact that he was a villain for appearing on this counter-Trump march.
Oh, I see. Okay, right. I don't wish to get into that dispute between you and Gary Lineker because, of course, he was Everton's highest-scoring forward since Dixie
so that's all right then.
Well, listen, what I was going to tell you was, because I mix with the people who know what's going on in Stockbroker Belt, okay?
Oh, really?
Sutton United will definitely play their game against Arsenal.
Are you going to go to that game?
At Gander Green Lane.
Are you going to go to that game?
Well, I don't know what's happening that weekend yet. It's quite busy.
When is it?
When is it?
Yeah.
It's on the weekend of the fifth round of the FA Cup.
Yes, I'm aware of that, but what's the date?
The dates? Now, the date
It'll be in March sometime, right?
It'll be
February.
It'll be in February. It's the third week in February.
Third week in February.
Third week-ish in February, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay?
All right. How about this from Minor, who says, Braveheart has a terrible cast except for one, Patrick McGowan. Patrick McGowan is good in it.
He was brilliant. He was
but
brilliant.
He's the only one that's good in it.
You know what the best bit of that film was? It was brilliant. Patrick McGowan, right, is the king. He's Longshanks. And they're in the top floor of their castle.
Yeah.
And they didn't actually have any glass in the windows in castles in those days.
They didn't have any glass, actually.
No, they didn't have any glass.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
It wasn't like, we've got glass, but we're not going to use it to put windows in.
No, that's right.
We're just going to drink out of it.
That's right. So anyway, his son turns out to be feeble compared to his father. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean,
a bit like Gladiator.
I haven't seen Gladiator.
You've never seen Gladiator?
No, I've never seen Gladiator.
That's a brilliant film.
No, yeah, I'm going to say it, definitely. So anyway, but his son is full of all sorts of, fibbity-gibbity, stupid ideas about military campaigns.
Flibbity-gibbity.
Yeah, that's right. Whereas old Longshanks says, I'm going to find this man Wallace.
I'm not a number. I'm a free man.
No. I'm going to find this man Wallace, and I'm going to hang, draw, and quarter him, and then burn his head on a stake, and all this. and the son is saying...
There's a lot of torture in this show.
Yeah, and the son is saying, I don't think we should do that, Father. I think we should do this. And he said, and what makes you think that? And then the son introduces his friend, who is also a bit of a sort of feeble individual.
Is he? Yeah.
Who says, great to meet you, sir. I am, in fact, a student of military encounters and strategy. And he said, "Oh, you really?"
Yeah.
And he puts his arm around his shoulder. Do you remember? And
no, I don't remember the film that well. I've
see.
only seen it like once. I thought it was rubbish.
So he puts his arm around his shoulder and then earnestly starts nodding his head. And so you're a student of military technology and tactics, are you?
Yeah.
He said, "Indeed I am, sir. I can advise you on all sorts of things." He said, "Can you fly?" And he said, "No." And then he propels him forward and throws him through the window from a huge height.
Very kind.
And of course, his son is quite shocked.
Yeah, he would
because this is his son's mate. You know, he's brought to introduce to his father,
Very
and his
cruel,
father's thrown him out the window.
Yeah.
Which is a bit harsh.
That
isn't
is
it,
very
really?
harsh indeed.
Imagine that. Imagine being introduced to somebody's father. Next minute
I know,
you're flying.
that's terrible.
Yeah.
I've got a great one here, though, from somebody called Nevertheless, who says, Lethal Weapon is more historically accurate than Braveheart. # nonsense.
Well, Braveheart wasn't very historically accurate, but I thought it was a great film.
No. How many times have you seen it? Is that one of the ones you keep watching over
2
and
or
over
3
again?
times. Well, you know, the start of it is so brilliant because what happens is
Why are we talking about Braveheart?
Well, because we were talking about combat and battle and that kind of stuff. Mel Gibson rides into the English camp. Well, in fact, it's a Scottish village.
Is this not in York, then?
No, this is in Scotland. And he rides into the English camp. Well, the English camp is, in fact, his old village, but it's been taken over by the English.
I see.
Because they suspected it had been infiltrated by all sorts of Scottish rebels who wanted to, attack the English.
Right.
So he rides down the main street and he puts his hands up like this to indicate he's surrendering because they're trying to find him because he's been knocking off a few of the British soldiers.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
So there's a bounty on his head.
There's a bounty on his head, and he's doing all this because he's very angry that they killed his wife. You see, so as he rides down the street, they all come out and they say, "We're going to get him now." But then he whips out one of those flails from his shirt.
A flail?
Well, you know the thing that Bruce Lee used to use? Two bits of metal.
2 bits of metal with a chain in the middle.
With a chain in the middle.
Yeah.
It's called a flail.
Is it?
It's called a flail.
I'm sure it's called a flail.
If you know anything about, kung fu.
I don't think it's called a flail.
It is called the flail. It is, don't worry. And so he whips this out, and then as the soldiers come towards him to get him off the horse, he kills about 4 of them in the first 2 seconds.
With the flail?
With the flail, which he can use.
Does he use it like Bruce Lee?
Yes, he does. He uses it just like Bruce Lee. Honestly,
well,
Bruce...
there you go. That's the first piece of historical inaccuracy.
Yeah, Bruce Lee and he must have been about 1,000 years apart, and yet they were both experts with the flail. How about that?
Yeah, how extraordinary.
Using the same sort of, ancient techniques.
It's obviously not historically accurate then, is it?
Yeah, it is, honestly. And then he just sort of takes them off one by one.
I've been to the William Wallace Historical Centre.
My name is William Wallace.
Which is not far from Stirling, and I've never seen a flail there.
Oh, there is flail there. Well,
when were you there? When were you last in Stirling?
No, I wasn't in Stirling, but I can tell you this: William Wallace was 6'6" tall, and they had to get a special big horse for him.
Well, why did they make Mel Gibson play him? He was about 5'6".
Yeah, that's right. He is actually, isn't he? But it was. No, I thought it was just a great film. It was a great love story. I like love stories.
That's enough about Braveheart. I'm not interested. Okay, it's rubbish. Yeah. Brendan says this: the condemned was not dragged along the floor behind horses on the floor. They were tied onto a plank of wood called a hurdle.
Yeah.
So they were tied onto a plank of wood and then dragged.
Oh, right.
So now you know something else.
Oh, why did they do that for?
Well, it's probably easier to drag them that way.
I suppose it is, yeah. It's not so much...
It's a bit messy otherwise, isn't it?
Well, not just messy, but it's all... why did they drag him around on a bit of wood then, behind the horses?
Well, 'cause it's pretty humiliating.
It's humiliating, I suppose, yeah.
To prove that you're not dying the death of an honourable man, I suppose.
Oh, I see, something like that,
it's all about that sort of thing. Anyway, never mind all that. We've got a lot of other things to talk about.
Well, the way I was told was,
You've not seen the time.
Is that they tie these ropes around the ankles, and then they just hit the horses on their rear.
Who told you this?
And then the horses gallop off, and of course it means you are sprung 8 feet into the air, and then you crash to the ground.
Well, who told you?
Oh, when I've been discussing the thing with historical researchers.
The pub in Surrey?
No, you mad?
You are actually like that guy in the pub who knows everything.
No.
Yeah, I know about that. Yeah, I used to know a bloke who was involved in medieval
historical academics. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, ridiculous. Hysterical academics, more like. This is Talk Sport.
Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening. But they fought with expert timing. There were funky Chinamen from funky Chinatown. They were chopping them up. They were chopping them down.
Remember that song, right?
Brilliant song. That was from my disco era.
Brilliant song.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't call it brilliant.
Kung fu fighting.
Yeah. Who's your part?
Oh,
do you remember his name?
Yeah, well, I don't remember his name, but it was some name like sort of Ika Kuka or something like that. You know what I mean?
It was Carl Douglas, actually.
Carl Douglas, yeah, that's right.
It wasn't Ika Kuka or anything.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean?
He was a black guy. He wasn't an Asian guy.
Was he?
Yeah.
Was he?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know. But anyway, it was a great song. I loved that. That came along at the same time as Kung Fu Fighting. Those cats are fast as lightning. That was the one.
Those are the words. I mean, how bizarre that you can remember the
Fighting,
words of the song.
Those cats are fast as lightning. Yeah. In fact, it's a little bit frightening.
Yeah,
I thought the lyrics were rubbish, actually.
Of course they were. The whole thing was
a
rubbish.
Bit frightening, yeah.
Stephen has sent us, would you believe, the actual document which Guido Fawkes signed.
Oh, wow.
You can see Guido's signature.
Show his signature. Let me look at this.
You can see it.
Oh, well, you see,
that's on
there
the
you
Two
go.
Mites Twitter.
There you go.
We've also got plenty of other tweets to read out. Will says suicide hangings and boiling testicles.
Yes,
we're off to a great start.
Well, I'm sorry, but, you know, we've got to bring the atmosphere of the occasion to the home.
Says there isn't a blue plaque at York, but there was a blue plank there when Porky visited.
Blue plank, that's a bit harsh, isn't it?
Mark says, I'm supposed to be sleeping, but I'm laughing about torture and mutilation.
It says here, Bruce Lee used nunchakus, you clueless fool.
Yeah, there you go. So you got that wrong as well.
The nunchakus. I thought it was a flail. It looks like a flail. Here we go. Speaking of throwing people through windows, how's old Porky doing? Well, why would I get thrown through a window, you fool?
Many people would express surprise that you've never been thrown through a window, actually. Because there were so many situations where you're quite objectionable. And you'd think people would take offence at some of the things that you've said.
I don't think so.
Ian says, Porky doesn't like you using manky because it's not proper English, but comes out with flibberty gibbety.
Yeah, that's an accepted colloquialism. Flibberty gibbet is in fact a medieval word for somebody who's a nuisance and can't sit still.
Is that right?
Yes.
Flibberty gibbet. Are you sure?
And Phil here
I thought it was a description of a rather flighty person.
Yes, it can be.
Not necessarily physically unable to sit still.
No, it can mean physically unable to sit still as well.
Sure?
Seriously, yeah. Now, you see, this is a great response from a chap called Phil. He says, I could listen to old Porky's knowledge on history all night long. Great insight and very interesting. You see, that's the sort of response I like. People who
Do you think he's got his tongue in his cheek?
No, and he says, keep it up, Porky. Those are the sort of people who appreciate the in-depthness that I bring to this show. Okay?
The in-depthness?
The in-depthness,
That's another word that doesn't exist.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean.
I have to tell you.
Anyway, what I was going to say is those great films and songs from the past, what they do is they refresh people's memories of those days when, you know, things were different. You know what I mean?
What, refresh your memories of what it was like when Braveheart was actually going on?
Yeah.
Well, how does it refresh your memory if you don't have one?
Well, who hasn't got one?
Well, I haven't got a memory of what happened during the William Wallace era because I wasn't alive.
No.
So how would I have a memory of it?
No, you'd have a memory of the era of the film coming out because it was a sensation. It won about 8 Oscars. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, what? So you mean it should remind you of when the film came out rather than of the actual historical part of the world that they were trying to describe?
Well, it can remind you.
Well, what does it remind you of then, Braveheart?
Braveheart.
What do you think of when you see Braveheart?
One of the best 3 films I've ever seen.
No. But you said it reminds you of the era that it came out.
Yes, that's right.
So what era did it come out?
Well, when I was at the top of the tree in Fleet Street.
Well, what year would that be?
Well, that'd be 80s, late 80s.
In the 80s?
Yeah,
late
80s.
So it makes you think of the 80s?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Is that when your other 2 favourite films came out?
I think so. Top Gun, definitely, and Godfather 2.
Which?
Godfather 2.
Godfather 2.
Yeah.
So Godfather 2, Top Gun, and Braveheart.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Spot the odd one out.
Why?
Well, Godfather 2's a decent film. The other 2 are not.
Well, I'm not going to respond to that because it's an individual taste, you see, and just because you don't fancy it doesn't mean to say it's
you were
poor.
attempting to tell me that Braveheart won a load of Oscars, therefore it must be a good film.
Well, it did.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that's a matter of taste, then, is it?
Of course, it's a matter of taste, but I mean, the point is that the Oscars are given to films which, generally speaking, have huge box office returns.
Yes, but that doesn't mean it's a good film, necessarily.
Well, it does, because it means a lot of people like it, and therefore the majority are saying it's a quality product.
Well, that doesn't mean it's a good film. It means
does.
a lot of people like it.
No, it doesn't. No.
Lots of people like lots of things. It doesn't mean that that's necessarily good.
Well, I'm...
You're just a populist, aren't you?
No, not necessarily populist. Listen, guess what's happened in Japan?
What's happened in Japan?
Yeah. What's happened in Japan is that they're going to have to introduce a law now, okay, to stop people working more than 100 hours overtime a month.
You should go live there.
No, I'm not joking. This is so serious.
You should go and live there. You would love it there.
No, I'm serious.
You'd be able to work all the time. This is an old story. We talked about this.
No. What we talked about a company boss who had to quit because one of his employees...
Because they were working too hard.
...committed suicide from working too hard.
Because they were working too hard. There was a name given to the syndrome, wasn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And as a result of which, the Japanese government are now being forced to introduce a maximum of 100 hours overtime. I mean, 100 hours overtime a month, that's 25 hours overtime a week.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
That could be up to 4 hours a day.
Well, it'd be 5 hours, wouldn't it?
Yesterday, a judge ordered a 46 million yen payout, that's £322,000, to the family of the 50-year-old manager of 2 donut shops. District Court found that in the 6 months before his fatal heart arrhythmia, he'd average at least 112 hours of overtime a month.
Oh, yeah.
God, blimey, that's terrible, isn't it? I mean, they just have a work ethic, the Japanese.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You would love it. I mean, you love working. You don't want to do anything but work, really, do you?
I respect them enormously for it, but I think if it goes to the point where, you know, you are causing serious medical problems to people because they just keep going, then I think that you've got to do something about it, and clearly they have.
OK. Francis says this, apropos of your knowledge. Every pub has a know-all. They always butt into people's conversations and tend to have no mates. Does that sound like anyone you know?
Well, you think that's funny, do you?
I do think that's funny.
Why are you sniggering at that, eh?
Because I think it's funny. Because I accused you of being like the guy in the pub that knows it all.
Oh, all right. Well, tell me about all these mates of yours that you go to the pub with then. Who are they? What are their names?
Well, I'm not allowed to tell you who they are because they don't want me to do that.
No, because you haven't got any.
I haven't got any mates. Is that what you're referring to now?
Well, I would say it's very limited, your range of friends,
Would
to be
you
honest.
say that? Well, I don't really need to have
a
few
few hangers-on, a few bums.
I don't really need to have a lot of friends.
A few guys who think, are like gangsters and all that kind of stuff.
I have friends in the business which we used to work in.
Yes.
Which you don't, because of course nobody likes you.
Well, you see, that's a very wide-ranging. And hey, by the way, have you seen this case which I've been keeping my eyes on about these 2 very senior lady police officers?
Lady police officer.
Yeah.
Is this the one where one of them exposed their breasts?
Oh, it's unbelievable.
It's up in Manchester or somewhere.
Up in Manchester, and you won't believe it.
Is that still going on?
Well, do you know why it's still going on?
Why?
Because the police authority concerned, which is, I think it's the Greater Manchester Police.
I think it is.
Yeah, has had to make a decision, and they've come up with a decision. And the lady who, in fact, was done, on an internal investigation.
She was the big cheese, right?
Yeah, she was an assistant police commissioner.
Yeah.
And she actually exposed one of her breasts to another senior officer who was a superintendent.
I thought she exposed both of them.
No, one of them.
So wasn't she trying to show that she hadn't had any work done?
Exactly.
Yeah.
She said, this is real, you've had all that silicone pumped into you, do you want to be known just for your sort of bosom, that kind of stuff,
Yes.
Terrible drunken
Yes.
rant.
Shocking behaviour.
But the one who did that and was reprimanded... in fact, the verdict of...
Because the one who exposed herself was told she could stay in her job.
Well, I'm just about to say, the one who exposed herself will get £109,000 a year, and as assistant chief constable, right, has been told she's not going to be sacked.
Right.
A misconduct panel last month recommended the 47-year-old who had been suspended from a post as Assistant Chief Constable of Greater Manchester be reinstated with a final written warning.
Uh-huh.
Yesterday, bosses made it clear they had no choice but to rubber stamp the verdict, even though they deemed the officer's behaviour absolutely appalling.
So she's been reinstated?
As an Assistant Chief Constable
I thought this was
to the Greater Manchester Police. No.
Why are they still dragging it on now? What's wrong with
because the final verdict was given. The problem was that an internal disciplinary hearing found her guilty of this appalling behaviour and she was reprimanded, and after that it was assumed that the police authority would then have to sack her.
Right.
In fact, when it went before them, they said, no, she can keep her job.
Yeah, marvellous.
Now, the only problem is that other senior police officers within that force...
She'd been told to stay off the old laughing juice.
Well, you'd think that she'd do that anyway, wouldn't you? What I was going to say is that other senior officers now within the force, according to information received, have said, well, how can we give her a job in any position of authority? Now she's going to be laughed at by other people,
Well, exactly.
So
they'll be sniggering behind her back.
That's right, yeah. So you know exactly what's going to happen now, don't you?
She's going to get paid off and retired.
Yeah,
right?
she will probably be given...
Probably stressed out.
The thing is, if she had been dismissed from a job after being found guilty of this appalling behaviour, she'd have lost the whole pension pot, which is like over £500,000.
Yes.
So
they don't like to do that.
They don't like to do that.
No, that's seen as being very, very harsh and too unfair, which is ludicrous.
Yeah.
Now, one final tweet for you on the subject of Braveheart. Andrew says, who's obviously seen the film, he kills one guy with a ball and chain that he has hidden behind his back. That's it. So he didn't kill loads of them.
Oh, but he was waving it around in such a way that
he kills one of them.
He didn't half sort them out, I'm telling you.
He kills one of them. Now, coming up next, we're going to talk about transfers because I've got a couple of stories for you.
Excellent.
Simon Johnson was up at Anfield. He's going to tell us what he thinks about Chelsea and whether anybody's going to catch him. This is TalkSport.
Let's go.
Talk Sport, we are the two mics. There will be a podcast coming out a little bit later on. In the next hour, we're going to be going across to the US of A to catch up with security and terrorism expert Malcolm Nance. Right now, though, we've got the delightful Mr. Simon Johnson with us. He was up at Anfield for the Standard, watching Chelsea getting a draw with Liverpool, which doesn't appear to have turned out to be quite so bad as you would think. Simon, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Very well indeed. I mean, they should have won this, Chelsea, really, shouldn't they? I mean, Costa will probably rue that penalty
Certainly
miss.
will.
But in front of Anfield, even for Costa, it must be a little bit intimidating.
Yeah, I mean, it
In
was
front
one
of
of
the Kop,
those.
I mean.
Yeah, it was one of those actually where you get a feeling sometimes when you see a player step up to take a penalty, and the Kop were giving him all kinds of stick. Obviously, not too happy with the penalty being awarded in the first place, and he just sort of felt that he didn't really fancy it, and it was a pretty tame effort. He did give Simon Mignolet a chance to redeem himself after his poor, to put it mildly, his poor.
It was pretty low down, though. I
I
mean, he did well to get down to it, didn't he?
Yeah, but it was a bit scuffed. It wasn't hit with much power, and it wasn't right in the corner.
Yeah, the
either.
goalie just guessed, Simon, didn't he? Just as goalkeepers do, and he just went the right way.
Exactly. I think it was one of those where if the keeper goes the right way, you should save it.
Exactly.
And, what I should point out is Eden Hazard, who is Chelsea's normal penalty taker in recent years. He'd obviously been substituted, so that's why Costa stepped up. And whilst Hazard didn't have one of his better games, perhaps enough in hindsight, it was a mistake to bring him off, because I think he would have put it away.
That's right. But Simon, nevertheless, what a brilliant night for Chelsea. They couldn't possibly have anticipated that, dropping 2 points at Anfield could have extended their lead at the top of the Premier League last night.
Absolutely. I mean, that was the weird sort of feeling as you and sensation you got when you spoke to the players and saw them walk past afterwards. That funny enough, they sort of felt like they'd still won the game.
Yes.
Because of course the draw kept Liverpool as well further back, and then the result coming from the Emirates. I mean, what a big lift to find out that ahead of their visit to Stamford Bridge on Saturday, the gap's actually extended.
I know.
Which is incredible, isn't it?
Well.
Well, it's incredible. I mean, I was just watching Twitter tonight after the game, and Arsenal FC tweeted out a word from Arsene Wenger before the game. The players are prepared and mentally focused to deal with the challenges we will face. And then after the game, quote from Arsene Wenger, who says they weren't mentally ready. So, I mean, I don't know what you do with that, really.
Well, and also, of course, on the eve of the game, he was sort of saying how it's the best strike force he's ever had.
Yeah.
So I just think that, in a way, that's one of the differences between Antonio Conte and the other managers, is that they're doing a lot of talking, but they're not backing it up on the pitch, whereas Conte, whilst not the most interesting man that to quote, is just letting the others talk themselves almost into a corner. I mean, Jurgen Klopp, it was only a few weeks ago where he said, it must be really gutting for Chelsea that they've won 13 games in a row and yet they're only 6 points ahead of us. Well, it certainly, those words came back to bite him. And I just think the difference between Chelsea and the rest is that when Chelsea slip up, the others can't take advantage, and they're sort of destroying their own total hopes themselves.
What I think is amazing, Simon, is that most managers would relish cashing in on the feel-good factor of Arsenal's last result. Two of his players, Theo Walcott, get a hat-trick. One of his other forwards scores two. They're knocking the goals in all over the place. And yet, from that, instead of having the feel-good factor, he bred complacency in his squad.
Well, I suspect, I mean, obviously I wasn't there last night, but I wonder whether Arsenal perhaps were already thinking the result was done and dusted, and had their sort of minds already thinking about Saturday and going to Stamford Bridge. Just sort of following sort of what was going on from Anfield, you could tell that Arsenal didn't sort of really start the game with any intensity, any sort of real focus, and that Watford who, let's be honest, have been in pretty poor form themselves of late, were sort of pretty comfortable, and in fact should have been further ahead. Yes, Arsenal fought back in the second half, but it was too little too late. And this is the problem with Arsenal, is that sort of every time you sort of think, this could sort of be an opportunity for them, they blow it, and it tends to be against teams that really they should be comfortably beating. And when they go to Stamford Bridge on Saturday, a place where they've got a terrible record, it certainly sort of again puts into question their ability, as Wenger sort of went on to admit, mentally to win a title. Which, let's be honest, it's been 13 years since they last lifted it, and you just wonder if these players have got it in them to sort of turn up when it matters.
And there's a lot of talk about whether the touchline bans have any effect, before the bans are instituted. Do you think in Wenger's case it makes a big difference to the Arsenal players that he's not there?
I think I can't see it myself, because it's not as if he's banned from the stadium. He can still talk to them before the match. He can still give a dressing room team talk at half time, as well as communicating with his dugout during the game. And let's be honest, during the game, the players should be, on the whole, focused on what's going on in front of them, not listening to what's going on the sidelines. I know Conte constantly barks at his Chelsea players throughout the 90 minutes, but most of the time I think they're sort of ignoring him, because if they were to listen to everything he said, they'd probably be twisting and turning and sort of not.
They'd probably all be getting red
person.
carded all over the place as well. I mean,
they'd be getting deaf.
Well, exactly right. I mean, by the way, I don't know whether you've seen a lot of the other action from last night, but one of the things that Porky and I were just looking at before the show was that terrible tackle by Jack Rodwell.
God, it was awful.
In the Spurs game. And Spurs, again, I mean, didn't take advantage against Sunderland when you would have expected them to probably go there and get 3 points. But, I mean, very fortunate, was it not, that Dembele got up again from that?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, lads, I haven't seen the tackle, but I'll take your word for it. And, of course, those kind of moments in a game can certainly rue them. But
well, he sort of took him out of the knees where the ball was about 5 yards ahead of him.
It was a scything, it was a malicious scything sort of karate kung fu kick type operation.
Similar to what Xhaka got a red card for.
Yeah, it was indeed. Simon, what do you put Burnley's home form down to? Because it's quite remarkable. I mean, it is utterly remarkable.
Well, yeah, I mean, to put it mildly, and they're going to stay up on their home form alone. And
all but 1 point that they've got this season have come at home. They've only got 1 point away.
And no team fancies going there. I mean, Chelsea have to, sorry to bring it back to Chelsea, but, everyone talks about Liverpool and Arsenal, but the following week they've got to go to Burnley.
Yes.
And that won't be easy. I think, having sort of attended a few Burnley games, it's the ground, the atmosphere.
It's a ramshackle old ground, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of those old-fashioned, and I love it, actually. Not one of these
I
do. Nouveau.
Is that why you described it as ramshackle?
Well, it is a bit ramshackle in the sense that... You don't
normally describe something you like as ramshackle.
Well, no, I mean, affectionately, I describe it as ramshackle.
Right.
Yeah, because
lanky, maybe.
It's mostly made of wood, isn't it? And it is, seriously.
Goodison's a bit ramshackle, you might say.
No, Goodison is a smart.
No, it isn't. It's an old stadium that needs to be reshot.
No, it's a mature stadium. Whereas Burnley looks as though it was built.
What do you reckon, Simon?
During the Industrial Revolution.
Simon, what do you reckon? Goodison and Burnley are similar, aren't they?
No.
Well, I know where you're coming from, Mike.
Yes.
I think Goodison is another classic ground that I'll be very sad to see go if Everton ever do
get round to building the new stadium,
because these nouveau grounds, they're all
the same
facilities and it's all very clean and pretty, but it just lacks something. I mean, the bowling ground. It's no coincidence that West Ham are nowhere near as intimidating place to go to. Now they're at this sort of bowl, that looks all nice on TV, the London Stadium, but it just doesn't scare teams. Emirates Stadium, is it a coincidence that Arsenal haven't won the title since they moved there? Teams aren't worried about going there now. It's a lovely place to play.
I totally agree.
Burnley is not a nice place to play. You turn up there, it's going to be a.
But don't you start slagging places off as well? I mean, we have enough trouble with Porky slagging off towns all over Britain.
I mean,
where we can't go.
Simon, if you were a Martian and you were suddenly catapulted down to earth in the middle of a football stadium, you seriously wouldn't know whether you'd landed on the penalty spot at St Mary's, Southampton, or Middlesbrough's new ground, would you? I mean, they're identical.
Yeah, there's a lot of grounds that I travel to, and it's all sort of very neat and measured.
Yeah,
and
stadium.
But it just doesn't quite have the character, and I just think, like Burnley, I love these old classic grounds.
I do. I wish they hadn't knocked down Roker Park, and I wish they hadn't knocked down I don't know, the old Bolton ground.
I mean, it's all very well all this nostalgia that you're talking to
Yeah,
Simon
well-
about, but it is actually the closing of the transfer window, if you don't mind me talking about that.
Yeah, but nothing happened.
Yeah, well, that's what I want to talk to him about.
Oh, okay, go on.
Simon,
You want to talk to you
how
about nothing, Simon?
How soon will it be before somebody says, really, is this January transfer window worth having? Why don't we just not bother?
Well, I think talk to the clubs that bought players yesterday, and they would disagree with you, because if you look at most of the clubs that did do business, they're the ones that are struggling. They're the ones that in sort of fighting relegation desperately need sort of a player here and there to try and give them a boost.
Yeah.
The teams at the top, of course, yes, if a big player became available, then they do something. But on the whole,
but hasn't it? I mean, wasn't it originally
meant
to be a place where managers would be able to strengthen a squad that had been weakened by injury for some reason, right? Rather than what it's now become, which is where certain movable players get sort of bidded for by clubs that are worried about going down.
Yeah, I mean, it has changed. I mean, of course, you remember that when the transfer window, well, there wasn't one. It went all the way through to March, didn't it? And you could sort of buy all the way through. Yeah. And I suppose January gives it a bit of a focus, and it means that, I suppose, from the manager's point of view, they'll like, for example, if there's a player they want to keep, it brings an end to the speculation, at least for the time being. So they can then focus for the remaining 4 months and know that this is the squad they have. It's one of those where if you're trying to keep a player, you're delighted the window's shut. If you're trying to buy a player and you've lost out, it's a bit frustrating. It comes to an end. But I have to say that a few years ago the January transfer window provided excitement, particularly deadline day. You had a few big deals, but now it tends to be a bit of a muchness and a lot of hot air with very little being actually done of any real interest.
No, absolutely right. Well, listen, Simon, thank you very much indeed. Safe home. And,
thank you, Simon.
Simon there reporting in from the Standard.
Write a book on old football grounds.
Well, maybe you can help him write it. And you'll be able to bring your expertise to bear.
Yes,
I'm going to tell you about private jet business coming up in the next hour.
Okay, that's great.
We're going to be talking about security, and I'm going to tell you about the 3 different decades of those films you said came out in the 80s.
Yes.
This is Talk Sport.
Good.
Now, several people have pointed out that the same thing that Kenny has pointed out. He says Godfather 2 was 1974.
So?
Top Gun was 1986.
Yes.
And Braveheart was 1995.
Exactly.
Porky keeping up the tradition of reporting fake news.
No, not at all. The fact that Godfather 2 was made in the 70s doesn't mean to say I didn't used to stick it in my old DVD.
Right.
Not DVD, actually. My old...
your VHS
video
player?
Yeah, VHS video recorder in the 80s and watch it repeatedly. It was a great film.
Yes.
So, I'm sorry, a pox on your house with that sort of argument,
That's
okay?
A bit harsh. A pox on your house?
Yes, that's a medieval expression.
Yes, I know.
I don't agree with you.
You've got quite... Well, I know what it means.
Yes,
I just thought it was a bit crude, actually.
Now,
do you know what happens in January every year?
Lots of things happen in January every year.
Yeah, well, which business do you think is boosted in January every year?
I would say the business of buying cold remedies.
No, well, that may be true, but that's not the answer I'm looking for.
I would also say the business of taking back goods that have been bought for you at Christmas.
That's probably true too, but that's not really a boost in sales, is it?
Okay, so what are you talking about?
I'm talking about private jets.
Private jets?
Private jets that go through the roof, if you'll pardon the expression, apparently in January. Why? Because of the transfer window. Because
I see. Yeah, okay,
more and more football clubs
around the world.
So there's one particular private jet company in London whose business has gone up by 50% in the last 24 hours.
I know. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, he would do that to try and get here, there and everywhere. It's not that expensive to hire private jets these days, as we've discussed before on this show.
Yeah.
If you get 12 people in a 12-seater jet, it actually works out quite well.
Do you know how many private jets there are in the UK?
I guess I would say, let me think this through, where they all are. 300?
Not bad. 200 apparently.
200, yeah.
70 are loaned out or rented out to Premier League clubs over the course. Because, was there not... I mean, Everton have moved a few people around, but they haven't really done anything particularly brilliant, have they?
Well, also...
nobody really has.
Also, as we were saying to Simon there, deadline day is becoming a bit of an anachronism, isn't it, really?
Is, yeah.
Everton got all their business done early on. They bought Schneiderlin. And
Schneiderlin.
And
also they got that great kid from Charlton.
Of course we did.
Look you, or whatever his name is.
Lookman.
Yes,
19 years of age. Yeah, look you here.
Now, look, I've got a little test for you.
No, hang on. Before the test, can we just develop the point you made in your opener to this hour?
What?
I said last summer, well, now Claudio Ranieri has almost by mistake won less than the Premier League title.
Give him a bit of credit.
Well, I'll give him absolute credit, but excuse me, what I'm saying is he didn't even buy two of the players that contributed to the winning of the Premier League title.
True. Well, a lot of people said it was Nigel Pearson's team.
Exactly. So it was brought together. He kept it. He didn't panic. He didn't say, I'm pulling it apart. He let them go on. He marshalled them.
But he lost one of the key players that made them
of course he did.
Successful.
Kante went to Chelsea, obviously. But what I'm saying is, I said, look, if the new owners want to be absolutely ruthless about it, they've got to act like Real Madrid. Now they've got a guy who's won that Premier League title. Do they see this man doing it again? And the answer, of course, would be no, because everybody said it was a 5,000 to 1 chance. So what they should have done is they should have sacked him and brought in a big name international coach from Europe.
Well, like Carlo Ancelotti, for example.
Yes, absolutely. Right. Definitely. Somebody who was available
But is this not the failing of the board and the people who own the club? It's not really Claudio Ranieri's
No, it's not. Definitely not Claudio Ranieri's
because he wasn't given enough money to bring any players in either.
Well, exactly. They didn't act like the Premier League champions, did they?
No.
In the way that Manchester City, United, Chelsea or Arsenal would have done.
But they are still in the Champions League, though.
Of course they're still in the Champions League. But the point is, after their defeat last night at Burnley, and they lost out to an 87th minute goal again, they seem to be going down to late goals all over the place.
Yeah.
They are now definitely getting sucked into a relegation battle.
Well, do you know what I find interesting? Is that all the people who were saying they'll never win the league last year are now the same people who were saying they'll never get relegated.
Yeah, well, maybe.
There's a bit of sort of Schadenfreude there.
There could well be, because, of course, all the people who said last year they'll never win the league had said at the start of the season they will get relegated.
Yes.
So now the relegation...
But now all these people are saying, no way Leicester will get relegated.
That's right.
But they're not very far away.
No, they're not very far away.
Especially if old Crystal Palace start to win a couple of games. Yeah. Swansea start to win a couple of games.
Well, Swansea are winning a couple of games, and Palace have now started on a turnaround, because Palace couldn't win anything in their first 6 games. That's right, under the charge... Hey?
You like that song?
Turn around.
Yeah, no, don't sing it.
Every now and then I get it. That was Bonnie...
what's her name?
Tyler.
Yes.
By the way, I tell you I think is in trouble.
Who?
Ipswich Town, the Tractor Boys.
Oh, what, you mean Mick McCarthy's team?
They lost 3-0 at home to Derby County.
Well, was he not likely to have been for the chop when Lincoln City knocked them out of the FA Cup?
Well, Lincoln City are doing really well. They won last night as well, and extended their lead at the top of the National League, I believe.
But was there not talk of, well, certainly the fans were singing "You're getting sacked in the morning" to him,
sacked in the morning. Sacked in the morning.
But he's still there.
You're getting sacked in the morning.
So where are Ipswich now in the league then?
In the morning. Eh?
Have we been hacked, by the way?
What do you mean?
I don't know. I'm not getting much coming through on my information devices.
Oh, really? Perhaps people don't want to speak to you.
No, it's not that. Now, do you want to do this test or not?
What do you want me to test off?
It's a test that says, are you at risk of dementia?
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
Ready to go? First question, are you over 65?
Sorry?
I'm just following the test, all right? I'm not trying to, demean you.
Yes.
Just answer the questions.
Right.
Are you over 65?
No.
Okay, in that case, next question is, are you of a healthy weight?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Do you think you're a
definitely.
healthy weight?
Yes.
Well, Dr. Bannon doesn't seem to think so.
Well, I'm sorry, but I know that I am.
All right, then. Do you or have you ever smoked, even socially?
Mildly.
That's a yes.
Mildly.
Do you drink more than 14 units of alcohol per week?
Well,
I know what the answer is.
Sometimes.
Well, I'll put yes, okay?
All right.
And that then leads to the next question. Do you consume most of your calories at night?
No.
No.
Definitely not.
Okay. Do you have kids?
No.
No. Do you socialise regularly?
Yes.
Okay.
No, that's no.
What do you mean no?
Is
it yes or no?
It's a no. No.
You don't socialise regularly?
No.
I thought you did.
No, I don't. No.
You don't?
No.
All right. The next one from that then is, do you often feel lonely?
No.
No.
Never.
Okay. Never. Do you carry excess weight around your middle? That has to be a yes.
Yes.
Okay. And then that takes you back to...
Mildly.
This is a good one. You'll like this one. Do you keep your mind active?
Yes, at all times.
Okay.
Yes.
Next question. Do you have high blood pressure, cholesterol or diabetes?
No.
No.
Definitely not.
Do you get 7 to 9 hours sleep per night?
No.
Ryan, you're all over the place with this.
Well, I wouldn't want,
all right,
I wouldn't want 7 to 9 hours.
Do you know what that leads you to?
No.
Medium risk.
Medium risk for what?
For getting dementia.
Well, you see,
it says make some changes to your lifestyle to ensure your head and your heart remain healthy as you age.
I honestly think...
Hang on, incorporate more activity into your daily life and watch your diet closely.
Yeah.
Ensure you are socialising and keeping your mind active too.
Yeah, I have to say, I just find these surveys utterly ridiculous. They're all based on supposition, all that kind of stuff.
This has come from Italian researchers.
Oh, really? Yeah, well, what do the Italians know about running their economy? Nothing.
Well, it's nothing to do with an economy.
Worst economy in civilised Europe.
What's that got to do with dementia?
Well, the people in Italy who are conducting surveys on people's dementia, I think half of them are suffering from dementia because the way they run the economy can only run a country into the ground. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, not every economy is an indicator of how good their scientific research is.
Well, I think it is.
Yeah.
If you've got a good economy and you've got spending lots of money on research and development and science and education and learning, you're a better country. Put it like that.
Okay.
By the way...
Anyway, it says that you need to, mix more with other people and keep your mind more active. And making changes now will help cut your chance of developing other serious conditions such as heart disease. Well, it's too late for that, isn't it?
Yeah, far too late.
You've already got it.
I've had it for 14 years now, dilated cardiomyopathy.
So you say.
Well, you've read the letters from Dr. Banner, which I've shared with you as a matter
everybody else has seen them too.
Yeah, well, they have, because I don't have any secrets about that. You asked me a question there about something about learning or something, was it? What was it?
Something about learning?
Yeah, wasn't there a question about...
I don't think so, no.
Didn't you say, do you feel lonely? No. And then
do you feel lonely? Then it said no, and that went to...
Something about work?
Do you carry excess weight? It was something about... I don't think I asked you a question about work.
Okay, because the reason I raised that in that is that in one of my journals, which is in fact called Nature Neuroscience, so it has
Nature Neuroscience.
Yeah, it's on the
it's
same
Italian, is it?
No, it's not Italian, but it's on the same sort of subject.
Yeah.
Do you know that people who are perfectionists, who like to make sure their job is precise and they're there, are often guilty of over-learning their subject.
Yes.
And the expression "practice makes perfect" can often develop into over-perfect.
Yes.
And it can often develop...
Well, you can end up having a personality disorder, can't you?
Well, you can suffer from a condition called over-learning.
Yes.
And that's the point...
I don't think anyone's going to accuse you of that.
Say again?
I don't think anyone's going to accuse you of that.
What, of over-learning?
Yeah.
Well, they could do.
Well, no, they
could do. No, they could do.
No.
I'm very assiduous in my ability to absorb information about
quite
things
often
I do.
The information that you then sort of churn out on the other side is wrong, though.
No, I don't think so. Now, where this manifests itself is, for instance, take a musician who, and they apparently are the group of people who most overlearn, because what happens is they will try to master a piece of music, and then when they've mastered it, because they've got a concert or something coming up, they will then continue to play it over and over and over again. Actors are the same. Some actors who learn their lines just keep on learning them
but there's a
again
reason for that.
and again and again.
But if you're learning lines as an actor or you're learning music to play at a concert, then you're doing that so that basically you then do it naturally without having to think about it.
Yes.
Isn't that the point?
Yes, but musicians have long adhered to the idea of overlearning, okay? Because in that way, they think it's a fail-safe. But in accordance to this research, it's not. It could, in fact, screw your brain.
What? So what they recommended? You don't bother practising at all?
Well, no, you practice to a certain point, and then you should leave it.
Yeah, well, that's probably sensible.
Yeah.
Have they actually commissioned somebody to come up with this garbage?
Yes, they have. The idea is not new that you can overlearn. It was first suggested by the psychologist who popularised the term learning curve, okay?
Uh-huh.
Now, the learning curve...
Say the time.
Don't worry about the time, because this is important to help people's brains.
Yeah.
The learning curve description was introduced in 1885. Can you imagine that? You didn't know that, did you?
1885.
1885. You thought it was 1985.
I didn't, actually. I've never thought about the learning curve.
In 1885,
when it was first instituted.
And it was given to us by Hermann Ebbinghaus.
Ebbinghaus?
Yes, who pioneered experimental studies of memory.
Herman the Learner.
Herman the Learner pointed out that overlearning subjects to retain what had been learnt for a longer period of time was not necessarily a good thing.
Marvellous.
He was from Brown University in Rhode Island.
Was he?
We've been there.
Yeah, I know somebody who went there.
Well, we both went there. Went to a wedding there.
You went? No, you haven't been to Brown University at all.
No, we went to Rhode Island.
No, I know somebody who went to Brown, is what I'm saying.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Rhode Island's the smallest state in the Union,
it is.
So almost everybody who's been to Rhode Island has probably been to Brown University.
No, they haven't, actually.
Yeah.
No. That's like you saying you went to Oxford University.
I have been to Oxford University.
No, you haven't. You've only been to it. You haven't actually attended it.
I didn't say I'd attended it.
Yeah, but you try and make out that you had.
No,
You've seen
no.
the time,
I went there for a 5-day interview to Brasenose College.
Well, your timekeeping, you probably went there for 1 day.
The scientists scanned the brains of those involved in the experiment to search for a biological explanation, but they couldn't find one. Couldn't find one. No, well, it doesn't surprise me. That Plasticity of the brain, they said.
Useless piece of information you've ever imparted to me, and that's saying something.
No.
This is Talk Sport. Talk Sport. We are the two mics. Coming up a little bit later on in this hour, we're going to talk about Donald Trump and the story that everybody else seems to be talking about, which is, of course, his immigration plan and his policy of keeping various people out of the country. Is it actually going to make America safer? I suspect it won't, but we'll be talking to a guy who knows about all of that. Here's one from Rob, who says, MG, do you keep your mind active? Porky, yes. 60 seconds later, he couldn't remember the question who was asked. Mm-hmm. Ha, ha, ha.
Well, that's because the questions are coming too fast and furiously, but I knew exactly what you were talking about. Don't you worry about that.
Of course, Ask Porky's coming out a little bit later on. We've got a lot of great questions for that.
Yes, OK.
But you may also wish to remind people that we've got Postman Pork coming up. I saw you had a couple of packages that came in today.
A couple of packages, a couple of letters. I'll try and get through them all. Don't worry, folks. I'll open a couple in advance so that I know that we've got quality stuff there. But please keep writing to me, because I promise you that, it's a very welcome bridge between us and yourselves. And this, of course, is a family show. And we welcome and value every single listener.
Yeah, well, of course. Are you going to give the address out then? This is my cue for you to give the address out.
Indeed. The address is Postman Pork at TalkSport, which is 18 Hatfields, Hatfields, which is London SE1, 8DJ.
Very good.
OK?
Now, have you seen this story about David Cameron trying to get Paul Dacre sacked?
No, but it doesn't surprise me. Paul Dacre, for the benefit of our millions of listeners, is the editor and supremo.
Editor-in-chief, I think you'll find.
Editor-in-chief and supremo of the Daily Mail.
A man who really did clamber to the top of the greasy pole.
Oh, he did. And I think he's editor-in-chief of the Mail on Sunday, isn't he?
Well, he's editor-in-chief of Associated Newspapers.
Yes, that's right,
more or less. Although I think that's been slightly watered down since the new younger Rothermere has been put in charge.
I agree. And I think he's just celebrated his 70th birthday.
I think that's true.
Yes.
Well, it's emerged, according to a report by Newsnight, that at one point or other during the pre-Brexit referendum, that Cameron had a meeting with Lord Rothermere and told him that he couldn't believe the disgraceful stance that had been taken by the Daily Mail, which was to get Britain out of Europe.
Really?
And he couldn't believe how personal it had become.
Because the Mail on Sunday, which is the Sunday paper in that group, went, exactly the opposite way.
Yes, quite.
One of them was Remainer. That would have been the Mail on Sunday.
Yeah.
And the Brexit exit paper was the Daily Mail Monday to Saturday. That's right.
And apparently the Prime Minister personally tried to persuade Mr Dacre to cut him some slack in a private meeting that he had in his Downing Street flat on the 2nd of February of last year.
Really?
Yeah. However, Dacre basically said, look, I've always been out to Europe. I'm not interested in Europe, and I think most of our readers are the same. So he then went, supposedly, to his boss before the referendum took place. And tried to get him fired and say, you've got to get rid of this man.
Cameron did?
Yeah.
Well, that does not surprise me at all. David Cameron, in my view, and if you're listening, Mr Cameron, then I'm sorry, but I have to be brutally frank here, was probably the worst Prime Minister we've had since the Second World War.
I don't think that's true.
Well, do you know why? Because everything I suspected about David Cameron is now come to pass. He was a rich boy playing at being a politician.
Yeah, he was he was not a conviction politician. He was
not a conviction politician.
Didn't believe in anything.
He married into the aristocracy. His wife,
Sam Cam,
was from a titled family, and I have to say, he played at trying to be the people's Prime Minister, and all sorts of things now come out. The fact that now he's making loads of money, as is his wont. He's a retired Prime Minister. Or was a Prime Minister who's been rejected by the country, basically.
Well, he basically sort of screwed it all up.
He completely screwed it up.
Because if it hadn't been for the referendum and his mismanagement of all of that, then he would probably still be Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And he'd probably be thought of as rather a good Prime Minister.
No, he wouldn't mind. You know why? Because he tried to play at being Prime Minister. If he'd
No, but what I'm saying is that had he not had to resign by basically making a huge sort of dog's breakfast of organising the referendum and then losing it, it would be a very different picture.
Well, would it or would it not? I don't know. The point is, he had an opportunity to win a majority against the next worst Prime Minister since the Second World War, Gordon Brown, and he completely screwed that up.
I mean, surely he wasn't worse than Brown.
Well, he screwed it up, and do you know why? He had no convictions whatsoever, and he went down the middle road. He thought, I don't really want to tell people what I think about, the policies of the right. Can I steal some policies from the left? Let me go down the middle. And in doing that, of course, he completely screwed up, didn't get a majority, and ended up with a coalition government. Now, he actually liked coalition government. Do you know why?
Why?
Because you could blame anything that went wrong on Nick Clegg and say, well, what can I do about it? We're carrying these Liberals with us and all that. Then when he got a majority, He completely screwed that up by not acting like a prime minister with a majority, and again trying to appease everybody, and and then very, very stupidly for a politician, when he decided to grant a referendum, which he could have waited another 2 years for, by the way. He'd no way he had to do it as quickly as he did after winning an election. Could have waited at least another 2 years. He then decided to actually nail his colours to the mast of one side of the referendum. Yeah. He didn't have to do that.
No, he didn't have to do that.
He could have said, look, I'll be the referee.
He didn't have to do any of it.
No, he didn't have to do it. I'll be the referee, and you guys, fight it out in the middle, and then I'll adjudicate. No. Once he decided that, we are going to remain, and the country said, we don't agree with you, he had to go, and he's gone.
Exactly.
And now he flies around in first class again, apparently, according to what I've read. Whereas, of course, when he was Prime Minister, and he was Dave, man of the people, Lord Snooty, pretending to be, the Bash Street Kid, he was flying EasyJet.
Yeah. And that's part of the problem that we live in, the society we live in now, that if you're the Prime Minister, you have to make yourself look as if you're man of the people.
Why?
It's absolutely ridiculous.
If I was Prime Minister and somebody said, excuse me, is that a £6,000 Rolex watch you're wearing? I'd say yes, it is, actually.
Donald Trump is now the President of the United States of America. We're going to talk about him coming up very shortly. I mean, can you imagine anyone in America expecting him to get on a
EasyJet,
one of those budget airlines,
totally agree,
to fly down to Washington
even
and
his own,
sit there?
Even his own. He wouldn't even get on Trump Airlines if he was still running the East Coast Airline.
No, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I thought you were going to tell me something about Chopin. Earlier on. You told me that you had a story, because what we like to do on this show is to sort of sashay between the serious political events of the day.
I agree.
And also your very interesting take on the arts.
I agree.
And last night, of course, you had the famous penis Picasso picture.
No, I called it the penicular extension. I did not use the word you've just used, because we're a family show, and I will continue not to use that word.
Penis is a perfectly acceptable word.
Well, you say so. I think it can be adjudged
it's
offensive.
Only because you're rather bizarrely Victorian and prudish in your attitudes about the male and female body.
Yeah. Anyway, listen.
What are you going to tell us about Chopin?
Well, first of all, can I just put you right?
What?
It wasn't Chopin. It was.
Well, you said it was Chopin.
I thought it was, but it wasn't.
Andy Goldstein.
It was Franz Schubert.
Oh, Schubert. Okay.
Yeah, Schubert. Yeah. Now, do you know what?
Certainly a different man.
Do you know what Schubert? This is an amazing thing. Schubert was around for only 31 years. He was a genius. He wrote more than 600 pieces. Okay,
600 what?
Well, like pieces,
concertos.
No, song.
Sonatas.
No, pieces.
Well, what?
We call them vocal works. We call them vocal works in classical music. Yeah. So he composed. So that's like saying Paul McCartney and John Lennon wrote 600 songs before they were 31, which they probably did, I suppose. But, it's that sort of level of genius, you know what I mean? So, anyway, he died at 31.
Yeah.
He wrote, during his lifetime, 20,000 bars of music in 1815 alone.
Really?
So, in 1815...
I don't know how much that is.
Well, it's a lot.
How do you know?
Well, 20,000 bars. Think about it, right?
I don't know. I mean, 20,000 bars. If you're a composer and that's what you do for a living, how many bars is that per day?
It's about 450 a week.
Well, that's not that many. It's 100 a day, less.
Hang on. You're talking about bars of music here.
A bar of music is not very long.
It's about 70 bars a day. Every day of your life.
Yeah, well, if you're a composer, that's what you do.
No, that's huge. That's huge.
No, it's not.
It's huge.
Do you want to have a bar of music played to you so you know how long it is?
Yes, but it doesn't matter how
long.
Listen, it doesn't matter how long it is when you play it. Yeah. It takes 10 times as long to compose it as it does to play it, you idiot.
Well, I mean,
because there's nothing there. It's a white piece of paper. You
go to about 70 bars a week. Never mind create them.
I'm going to ignore that stupidity. Anyway, the point of the story is.
Yeah, what is the point?
He
was born in Elsergrund.
He also wrote 150 songs. On top of his...
you know what his most famous song is?
His most famous song?
Yeah.
Just remind me.
It's Ave Maria, I think.
Ave Maria, that's right, yeah, Ave Maria. But anyway, do you know what his everlasting legacy is? This is why he was born yesterday, by the way.
Born yesterday?
In 1797, if you see what I mean. He wasn't actually born yesterday.
That's great. What do you think, I was born yesterday?
No. The anniversary of his birth was yesterday in 1797.
Oh, yeah.
Which is quite a long time ago, obviously. And do you know what the everlasting legacy of him is?
No.
Right, there's a Samsung washing machine.
He knew Brahms and Liszt as well.
He did, yes. There's a Samsung washing machine whose cycle, towards the end of the 61-minute, cycle, plays the last bars of his Trout Quintet. Sorry, what's your problem? That's an everlasting legacy. Who'd have thought?
The Trout Quintet.
The Trout Quintet.
Right.
Who'd have thought when he died in 1828 on his deathbed? Somebody would have said, "Don't worry, France."
Did he say, make sure you sell this onto Samsung when they start making washing machines?
No, somebody would have said, "Don't worry, France. By the year 2017, Samsung."
You're doing Braveheart again.
Yeah, that's right. Samsung will be using your Trout Quintet in their washing cycle, which is what they do.
There you have it. This is Talk Sport.
It's the competition that football dreams are made of. The competition in which Davids can vanquish Goliaths and underdogs can have their day. It's the FA Cup, and it's all here live on Talk Sport and Talk Sport 2.
This is why we love the FA Cup!
Hear all of the magic of the FA Cup live on Talk Sport and Talk Sport 2 with TradePoint. Free bulk delivery on orders over £200 from stock, from store to site. Find out more at tradepoint.co.uk.
Welcome to Motorpoint. How can I help?
I'm looking for your best price on an executive saloon. Less than 20,000 miles on the clock.
We've got a 16-plate Mercedes C-Class for $17,799, saving $11,336 versus new.
With climate and cruise control.
And with the balance of the manufacturer's warranty.
Okay, great. And I want to take it home today.
Of course.
With a baby unicorn in the passenger seat.
Well, you can buy the car and take it home today. Motorpoint. Get more car for your money. Just no baby unicorns. Visit Motorpoint Chingford or motorpoint.co.uk today.
Sport, we are the two mics, and you might be forgiven for thinking there's only one news story around at the moment, because the only story that anybody seems to be wanting to do, both on this side of the Atlantic and on the opposite side of the Atlantic,
airwaves,
is whether Donald Trump should be banning people from coming to America, and whether we should be banning Donald Trump from coming to Britain. And we're going to talk to a man who's got a bit more sense than to take it from a political perspective. He's going to cut through all the nonsense. We're going to talk to Malcolm Nance, who is, of course, an expert in terrorism and security. He's a retired United States Navy Senior Chief Petty Officer. He's got lots and lots of qualifications for the questions we're going to ask him. We're going to say a very good morning to him. Good morning to you, Malcolm.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Yeah,
very well, thank you.
Very well indeed. The first obvious question, I guess, Malcolm, is do you believe that Trump's immigration ban, he and his people are very keen to call it not a Muslim ban, and you can take a view on that if you like, but is that actually going to make America safer, or is it going to make it more likely to be prone to terrorist attack?
Well, you know, I've been doing counterterrorism and intelligence operations for 35 years. And now that I'm sort of out of the field, written several books on the matter, sort of an academic and talk on TalkSport, I can say pretty much unequivocally that this is a disaster. This is going to prove to be very, very bad, not only for the United States, but the world. I mean, since the 1980s, Osama bin Laden has been saying that the United States can't be trusted, that they hate the Muslim world, that they intend to have a war with Islam. And the Trump administration is going full bore to prove that not only correct, but to actually make sure that bin Laden's vision happens. It's almost as if they have absolutely no one in there that has ever read a book, that knows anything about the rest of the world outside of their sort of nativist worldview, and Britain is going to suffer just as badly.
Sorry, why do you believe it will exacerbate the situation? I mean, the basic premise of this is that people who want to harm the United States should be kept from travelling to the United States. Does that then trigger people who are already inside the United States and wish ill against that country to suddenly get active?
Well, we've never had a terrorist attack by a refugee inside the United States.
Yeah.
The people who carry out terrorist attacks inside the United States are American citizens.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or people who have come to the United States or naturalized, but for the most part have been raised in the country as Americans who, you know, go out and eat Burger King and do silly things like that, and then suddenly find this alternative cult vision. To say that you want to keep out people that are going to do damage to the United States is saying you're going to keep out every person in the world. There are more members of ISIS and Al-Qaeda who originate from France and from England than others who have come to the United States. We've got no empirical data. We can't go by fantasy baseball. You have to go by the facts. And this is what people like me in the intelligence community, I worked strictly the Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia for decades just to ensure that we know who the bad people are and that they don't come to the United States. This is categorizing every Muslim. Right now he starts with 7 countries, but he really intends to go on to every Muslim and saying he has actually said it. All Muslims are bad. Islam is the problem, not that there are bad people in the world, and that he completely misunderstands that we have been fighting in defense of Islam since 9/11. All of our Arab allies, we don't want those governments to collapse and become ISIS-led governments or Al-Qaeda-led governments. And he doesn't seem to understand anything. So,
and what about
it's a little political when you...
And what about the likelihood then of those people inside the United States already? I mean, it would seem, from what you would know, say, for example, about ISIS or about Al-Qaeda and about these organisations, presumably they now would love to do something which would prove Donald Trump wrong, i.e. he might have a ban, but we're going to blow something up, like maybe one of his hotels, whether it's in the United States or somewhere else. You know what I mean? I presume that's the way they'll be thinking.
Well, I've been saying over a year now in the media that Donald Trump is ISIS's candidate.
Right.
They need a racist, bigoted ideologue.
Oh, I think we just lost Malcolm.
Seems to have lost Malcolm there.
I think the CIA have taken a hand in the...
they could well be.
Or possibly Trump administration people at the American Embassy.
I was about to say, that could have been a strike from...
we got him back.
From a dish.
Got you back there, Malcolm. Sorry, thought you were struck off there by your old chums at CIA.
No, NSA would have done that.
Yeah, true.
But no, what I was saying was that, Trump is the ISIS candidate. They need him in order to recruit. They need a boogeyman figure who says that he's against some of the fundamental American values. He also does have business interest all over the world, and they're very, very easy to target.
Right. Yeah.
And you see the first terrorist attack we've had since the inauguration was a Canadian right-wing extremist pro-Trump who went into a mosque and killed 6 people.
Well, that was in Canada.
So
but it's the first one in the world, he said, since the inauguration.
Okay, fair enough. But Malcolm, we seem to have... One great fact we're ignoring here is that Mr. Trump, President Trump, won the election. Now, the reason that he won the election was because the way he was speaking about the way he saw America's role in the world shrinking, people bought into the idea of revitalising America's strength, and he made it perfectly clear by talking about building walls and talking about the enemies of America, what he was going to do if he became the president, and that's what he's doing now. So from that point of view, your perspective on it is not the majority perspective.
Sure. Well, actually, no. In fact, my perspective is the majority perspective. Donald Trump was elected with 65 million votes. 63 million votes. Hillary Clinton gained 65.7 million votes. 120 million Americans didn't vote. By extension, he has been elected by 25% of the voting.
Yes, but they all had access to the voting process and the voting procedure.
Well, I understand that. I see where you're coming from.
And also, Malcolm, that's an argument that's somewhat beneath the military aspects of things and beneath the intelligence community's aspects, because they have to do, more or less what the commander-in-chief tells them to do, right? So presumably, they have to try and give him the best advice that they can in order to make what his mission statement is all about. Because, for example, those on the opposite side of your view, and I respect your view as something which is an expert view, would say, well, what are we supposed to do if this ban was not put into force? Are we supposed to just let things continue as they are, which isn't great?
Well, sure. Well, you know what? That's not true. Things were not great. What you see is what Donald Trump ran on a platform, and I'm speaking empirically as an intelligence officer. This could be the elections in any other country in the world, right? And if you were to tell me, look at these statistics, look at this data, look at what this person is saying, I would come up with the same assessment. Let's just start off with one basic form. Donald Trump categorically and empirically lied 70% of the time during that election. He ran on a platform of fear. People respond to fear. Now, me, who has to clean up that fear or has to help people on the other side of the world collect information on the basis of that, that is not operative. We cannot work when our allies come up to us and say, hey, are you a racist bigot, or are we going to have to start fighting you? And we have that happening right now. There's a great article today in one of the major newspapers that says Donald Trump's order banning immigrants into the United States just flat out is destroying CIA intelligence collection.
Well, it may be doing that, but what it's not doing, for example, is harming, supposedly anyway, at the moment, the relationship between Donald Trump and Theresa May, who's now taking a lot of flack on this side of the Atlantic because she's invited him to a state visit, right? So, I mean...
I'd like to see what the... I certainly would like to see what the Queen has to say about this. Look, the United States is... Donald Trump is saying openly that he will endorse torture. He's openly saying that he is preparing for a war against essentially the Muslim world, and he plans on escalating his ban against the Muslim world. He's a very simplistic man that doesn't understand the world.
But has there not been a war going on the Muslim world? I mean, I was listening to another expert the other day who said that during Obama's 8 years in power in the White House, he bombed these 7 countries that are on the Trump list about every 20 minutes on average.
Yeah, but he didn't bomb the 7 countries. What he did was he dropped bombs against terrorist insurgents within those countries. But you have to leave out, we did it with the support of everything we did had an Arab force behind it and alongside of us with our special operations and intelligence officers. So we didn't just go pick a country, point at it, and just start dropping bombs. The Iraqi army, they are on the spear tip of wiping ISIS out of Iraq. We're supporting them. But I have 3 interpreters who risked their lives for over 10 years for me who just got their visas pulled to the United States, and they work with special operations for 10 years. You know, you just can't have this simplistic, I want it all worldview. You have to have a nuanced view of the other side of the world. What he's doing is he's drawing us in. He's closing off the borders. He's going to damage our trade. And again, this could be the elections in Burundi. I would, or Lesotho, and if there was one guy this way and another person that way, I'd be giving the same assessment.
Yeah.
But you can't just fundamentally say simplistic things and think that they're going to happen. He is not protecting us. He is actually going to cause far greater harm to the United States, both economically, militarily, with these, super, I'm sorry to say it, but relatively racist and bigoted executive orders.
Malcolm, isn't one of the problems that we have here is that actually the West doesn't know how to respond to terrorism in much the same way as America didn't know how to fight guerrilla warfare in Vietnam? And if you've got, you take George Bush Jr. and his response to 9/11. That's probably one of the reasons why the world is in such chaos as it is at the moment, with movements of hundreds of millions of people. But what I'm saying is, when you've got lorries driving around in the south of France mowing people down, that is an attack on the West. And if America are still the leader of the Western world, then the difficulty is always how a country as mighty as America can respond to those sort of attacks.
Well, the problem with that is that people take individual terrorist attacks, one of them, like the one in Nice or like the one in in Munich.
Yes.
And what they do is they act as a nation, 330 million people responding as if that truck's coming through their front door. And you cannot allow terrorists to dictate the values, the decisions, and actions of 330 million people. That's their win. What we had to do, and what Barack Obama did, was very quietly ramped up killing these guys on a massive scale, but using cooperative agencies, joint operations with our Arab allies, and committed to defending their nations to wipe out this threat. ISIS is on the ropes. And if Donald Trump, ever takes claim for destroying ISIS, he'd be 3 years too late. I mean, they are about to lose completely in Iraq in the next few weeks, just not even exist anymore. And they'll be surrounded in the city of Raqqa inside of Syria. But, that all being said...
But if a lot of those people then come and seek refugee status in Europe, right, they will probably then be allowed into America because the Trump ban will not cover them because they'll be coming in from Europe.
Well, yes, that's true too. But you know what? a long time ago when I was young, and I was a baby spy, as we like to say, I recall that there was a very serious problem with Irish republicanism, carrying out long-range sniper attacks, carrying out bombings and mortar attacks against British outposts in Northern Ireland. And we had Americans here, including one congressman from Long Island, funding those operations.
No, absolutely.
Well, yeah.
And we know that full well.
Terrorism as well. When we cannot equate the success of a truck, a trucker's weapon system attack in Nice, as radical terrorism that requires the elimination of, the barring of an entire, global religion versus a bombing of the horse parade, right? And then saying that we should buy Irish whiskey. So, terrorism is a tool used by human beings to do what it's doing to you and the rest of this world, and certainly to Donald Trump, because he's simplistic. He doesn't understand it. And that's to provide terror. And he is trying to use an atomic bomb to swatter the fly. And when, in fact, you just need to use fly swatter and a lot of spray.
Okay. Well, Malcolm, he's going to need a lot of spray, especially if ISIS get pushed out of wherever it is they are. Malcolm, thanks very much indeed. Malcolm Nance there, security and terrorism expert, on his view that this will not make America safer. It may not even make the world safer either. This is Talk Sport. We've got loads more coming up.
Is that from Schubert?
Schubert washing machine.
Well, there you go.
See if you can recognise the sound. It doesn't sound like that there's a coin in it, does it? It doesn't sound like that there's a coin in it.
What?
The washing machine.
I don't put coins in my washing machine.
No, nobody does, but sometimes you forget to take them out of your pockets.
I see what you mean, yeah.
I wasn't suggesting you've got a coin-operated washing machine.
No, sure. Now, what is interesting...
It's meant to be sounding like a washing machine.
Well, no, I think he's got the wrong one there.
No, this is the piece of music
specifically. Don't you think it's absolutely ironic that it ended up with Schubert's music being the end of a Samsung ad for washing machines?
Why?
Well, because it puts a whole new...
Oh, you mean it's the advert?
It's the advert.
Oh, I see. I thought you said something completely different.
What do you think I said?
I thought you said that the washing machine sounded like this particular piece of music.
Yeah, it does. It does.
What?
Sorry, to get this right. You know when you're sitting in your living room and the washing machine is on in the kitchen or the utility room, and then when the cycle's finished, it sends out a noise. Well, the noise...
Like beep?
Beep? Yeah. Except the noise the Samsung washing machine sends out is... the final bars of the Trout Quintet.
Why?
Eh?
Why?
Well, to alert you, the householder, to the fact that your cycle's finished. Well, I suppose it could be, but I've got a Bosch washing machine actually, and that's got a musical ending to it. I don't know whose it is actually, but
I've got a Bosch machine that doesn't make any noise other than a beep.
Oh well, mine does.
Which one have you got?
Well, a better one than you, obviously.
Well, obviously.
Yeah.
And which particular model is it?
Well, I don't know because I don't go around writing down the model number of my washing machine, do I?
Just because I've caught you
out.
What
an idiot!
Telling another untruth.
How dare you?
Your washing machine does not make music.
It does.
No, it does.
It does.
Well, you prove it to me.
How
you
can
go
I do
home
that?
this morning,
you
put a load on, when it stops, record it.
I'm not doing that.
You record it, and you bring it in tomorrow and we'll play it out.
No, I'm not doing that. I do not have to justify myself.
Yes, you do.
Happens on Samsung washing machines. Now, do you not think it's ironic that some people would say, do you think that would make Schubert spin in his grave? And, of course, your response would be...
Is that supposed to be a joke?
Well, I was about to say, it's a washing machine that's spinning, not Schubert in his grave. I mean,
You've come a very long way to make that pretty lame joke.
No, I mean, that's a huge irony, isn't it?
Well, why would it make him spin in his grave?
Well, because he might think that after all his genius of his 20,000 bars of music and how many songs did he write? Like 300 or something.
Well, you said 20,000 bars.
20,000 bars, 150 songs, and 600 vocal works.
Yeah.
He might think at the end of all that, and I ended up, with the noise emanating from a washing machine. Because, of course, when he died in 1828, there was no such thing as washing machines.
There certainly wasn't.
No, know.
But the point is
that he will
surely,
be very upset, I would think.
No, I don't think so, because unless he was some kind of elitist, why would he not be happy that his music was being played constantly whenever anybody was doing something as mundane as washing their clothes?
Yes.
I would have thought he'd be rather happy about that. And in fact,
yes.
Now that you've revealed this, maybe his estate will be going after Samsung for quite a large royalty payment.
Maybe they will, but I'm sure that was agreed before they used it. Talking actually about domestic appliances.
Talking about domestic appliances.
Yes.
If you
now,
must.
Stockbroker Belt, Epsom, very close to where I live.
Yeah, not exactly where you live, but quite close.
A fire in a resident's flat this morning.
A residential flat?
Residential flat. Resulted in...
What?
Jimmy White, snooker player, homeless. It was his flat.
Well, Jimmy White's house has gone up.
Jimmy White lived in a flat in Epsom, and
awful,
everybody around, there sort of knew it and that kind of stuff. He nips out this morning, apparently, to go and get the papers or something, a loaf of bread or something like that.
Yeah.
Comes back, fire engines.
Oh, goodness.
His flat's on fire, and the only thing that he saved was his queue.
Really?
It was in the boot of his car.
Thank goodness he wasn't in the flat as well.
Exactly. He's been to an exhibition the night before, but it was apparently it was terrible. So, Jimmy, if you're listening, because I know you are a listener, I'm terribly sorry to hear about the bad news there. That's a shocking...
That must be one of the most awful things that can ever happen.
Oh,
I mean,
I would hate it.
I've had a house flooded.
Yes, which is pretty grim.
But to have a house just go up in flames must be so awful, because you lose everything, don't you?
Yeah, of course you do.
I mean, you have nothing left. And people who... I was watching a documentary, I think it was about Tom Petty.
Yes.
Over in California.
Right.
Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. I think he had a really
Was Tom Petty in the Travelling Wilburys?
He was.
Yes.
Yeah, he was one of the founding sort of members of it.
Yes.
But he had a terrible house fire in one of his houses out in Hollywood.
Yes.
And he kind of completely threw him for years because he lost everything that he'd ever owned. And he said, you can't explain. And obviously it was quite a big house. He was quite a wealthy guy. He said, you can't explain the feeling of loss.
Yeah.
When your entire life's history is effectively wiped out.
Well, Ringo Starr had a house over in California.
He had a fire,
and he lost a lot of Beatles memorabilia, including sort of gold discs and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely shocking. But on a very smaller basis, I know somebody who had a fire in their kitchen, right? Yeah. And there were a few flames and all that, but it was pretty well contained, and the damage was isolated to the kitchen.
Right.
Thought the householder, right? But you don't believe what smoke can do as damage to your house.
Well, the smell alone, I would imagine you never get rid of, do you?
You never get rid of it unless you repaint the whole thing and all that. But believe it or not, this was quite a reasonable sized house. It was 4 bedrooms, right? And you know what? Weeks later. The lady who lived there, I spoke to her, weeks later, she would go and open a drawer in the back bedroom, which wasn't used permanently, and find that the sheets and the clothes and things were smoke damaged in that drawer.
Yeah.
It goes everywhere.
Throw everything out.
Throw everything out. Or some of it was washable, some of it wasn't, but all the carpets in the whole house had to be replaced because they retained that terrible smoke smell.
And was that covered by the insurance or not? Did they only cover the bit that actually physically looks damaged?
A lot of the damage, which is emanates from the smoke damage bit, is not covered because it's called residual damage, and not directly as a result of the fire itself. Yes,
absolutely awful.
So pretty bad news.
Now, coming up in the next hour, it's time for Ask Porky, right?
Yeah.
But I'm also going to tell you about the world's first printed footbridge. Which has been erected in Madrid. Do you remember we've talked about these 3D printers in the past?
I can't get my head around it. I must
say, I find it slightly complicated.
I saw yesterday a ridiculous story saying that new prosthetic hands can now be made on 3D printers.
Right.
I just don't get it, honestly. I just can't understand it.
But can they then make their own hands?
Well, I have no idea. I simply cannot.
That would be a good thing.
Simply can't get my head around that sort of technology, honestly. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, this comes from one of your favourite places, the the Institute of Advanced Architecture of Catalonia.
Catalonia.
How about that?
Is that in Barcelona?
Well, Barcelona is in Catalonia, technically speaking.
Yes.
Anyway, we got loads coming up. This is TalkSport. This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics. There will be a podcast coming out a little bit later on, of course. Porky Vision tomorrow.
Yes.
We still haven't yet decided what the Porky quiz is going to be on.
Okay.
On Thursday.
We'll do
night.
that before the end of this show. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Nigel says this: Jimmy White homeless. Can't Mike Parry be neighbourly and put up a fellow stockbroker belt resident? Man
Well,
of the people.
I'd like to, but it's all those snooker cues and snooker tables and things that he's got.
Well,
there wouldn't be
He
room.
hasn't got a snooker table in his car, has he?
No, but he needs one for permanent practice. He'd have to install one, and much as I would love to help Jimmy out, well, a friend.
It's not very neighbourly of you. Why don't you put him up in one of your empty places then?
Well, a friend in need can be a blinking nuisance sometimes.
Yeah,
That's
well,
the
you've
problem,
often
you know
said
what I mean?
that. It has to
yes,
be true.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, here's someone from somebody calling themselves Your Autumn Years.
Yes.
He says, please tell Porky the first washing machine was patented in 1791.
Really?
Schubert died in 1826.
Yes, he did. But
Just saying.
Can I tell you, only one house in 8 million had a washing machine in 1791 or whenever they were invented. Believe me, they were not. We didn't even have a washing machine when I was growing up in the late 50s.
In the late 50s?
When I was born.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't born in the late 50s, I have to say. I was born in 1960, but we had a washing machine which leaked, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah?
And we lived in the top floor of this sort of flat.
So the roof went,
situation.
so the floor went through to the...
It went, well, funnily enough, it didn't go through to the flat below.
Yeah.
It went through to, there was a general hallway area.
Oh, I see.
And that all had to be redone as well. But they were massive things, the first washing machine.
Well, my mum didn't have a washing machine. She had what's called a dolly tub. And
a dolly tub?
Yeah, you put it on a ring of gas, which you set fire to, sort of thing, to heat it. And
you set fire to it?
Well, it was a gas ring that you put this huge dolly tub on.
Right.
And it boiled up, and she put all the
It's a bit like one of those things you now get for sort of an outside barbecue.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Yes, or more like with those water butts.
You know those
that collect
things.
water.
I mean, you see these things in Borough Market where people have got a big paella dish, for example.
Yes.
And they've got this big gas fire underneath.
Yeah, that's right. That sort of thing. Yeah,
sounds dangerous.
Yeah, well, it sounded quite dangerous. I've seen a ridiculous report, which I'm telling you will make you and me laugh. Right?
Really?
It's about how long you spend in a week or a month or whatever looking for a car parking space. Right?
Oh, yeah. Right.
Now the point is that. It certainly doesn't apply to us now if you bring your car into London, because you can't find any car parking spaces anymore in London.
Well, I mean, you can, but I mean, they're immensely expensive, generally speaking, and they're so expensive that sometimes you do find them.
Do you know
because
they're
people
up to
don't
like
do it.
£36 an hour?
£36 an hour.
You can pay for some car
Really?
parks in central London.
Yeah.
Listen to this.
I've never seen that. I mean, I've certainly seen £30 for a whole day.
No, I've seen huge amounts in Kensington and the West End, Knightsbridge and all that. It says drivers spend an average 4 days a year hunting for elusive parking slots, a study has found. Those in London waste almost 8 minutes searching for somewhere after each journey, compared with 5 minutes in the east of England and East Midlands. There's no point in searching for a parking slot in London. There aren't there, are there?
Well, there are, as I said. I mean, it just depends. I mean, there are some very interestingly, there are some very bad areas for parking, because what's happened in lots of places is they put in these residential parking bays, so that, for example, I mean, even around here, some of the parking bays on this street are residents only.
And even on a Sunday, you get booked if you park in them.
Yeah, and I mean, I was down in Sussex at the weekend, and I took the kids to this skate park where they go.
Yes.
And there was a guy handing out tickets in Hastings to people on a Sunday morning at 9:30.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen people walking around literally at 1 and 2 a.m. In Stockbroker Belt, Surrey, trying to catch people out on things like a Friday night or Friday night, Saturday morning.
But what I'm saying is, effectively, these residential parking bays actually limit the number of parking spaces for the ordinary owners.
Of course they do. Of course they do.
And even if you buy a permit for one of these parking bays, you don't get guaranteed a space.
No, I know.
Because they had that problem in Edinburgh as well.
They have to be available, don't they? You can't ring up and say, right, I want a refund. You just should have got there earlier.
But I mean, you'll remember Belsize Park from times gone by.
Yes.
And when I first came back from America, lived in my sister's flat there, which was terribly chocker, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And I mean,
both sides of the road.
Both sides of the road, but also, I mean, sometimes if I came home quite late from work at say 10 o'clock at night, you'd have to park about a mile away.
Yeah, that's right.
You couldn't park any. Which if you're a young woman or an older woman, any kind of woman coming back from work at that time of night, you can't get anywhere near your house.
I totally agree. In fact, actually, when we worked at the Express new building, that's the one they're knocking down now, just down the road from us.
How's
here.
that coming along, by the way?
Well, I don't pass it very often, but I mean, the boards were up, and funny thing is, there's a girl still sitting at the reception desk, because I walk past sometimes when I get off the train at Blackfriars Station, and it's very poignant, because I remember you used to run up the steps into that place, after a long lunch or something, and whatever.
I remember a guy coming in with a shotgun once in a plastic bag.
Oh, really?
Yeah, looking for somebody for the Daily Star.
Oh, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, the point of the story is that in those days, if you brought your car in, which I didn't very often, you could literally, when I became sort of, exec boss and all that kind of stuff, I had a slot in the car park.
That was one of the most difficult car parks to get in and out of.
It was, yeah. It was. It was unbelievable, wasn't it?
Horrendous.
Terribly difficult. But
especially if you had one of those cars which they used to give out quite a lot, Ford Sierra.
Yes.
Without power steering.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
You'd have to go backwards and forwards.
Really?
You'd have to go backwards and forwards to get out of the space.
Really?
About 1,000 times.
That's amazing. The cars that needed testing, road testing by the motoring editor, David Benson, were always parked in there. And they were always like Porsches and Maseratis and all that kind of stuff, Yeah. But he never used them because he didn't like driving, so I used to take them at the weekends.
Well, I know you've told us that story.
Yeah,
so I wouldn't have liked to try and get them out of that car park.
But anyway, the point is, do you remember that Coin Street, which is now...
That's down by ITV.
That's by ITV, that's right. It's in the next row, parallel to this one. That used to be one huge car park.
It did.
That was a bomb site.
It was.
What is now like prime residential...
I presume they're not any longer car parks, are they?
No, of course it's not. But it was one huge bomb site.
Because I used to park there when I took the kids down to London Eye or something like that.
Yeah, that's right, You just parked there.
I don't think they've built on them yet, have they? Or have
yes, they certainly have,
They?
Yeah, it was about £2.50 a day.
Yeah.
It's now about £40 a day.
Yeah, it was very cheap.
And Donald Gosling, who was the founder of National Car Parks, Sir Donald Gosling, his yacht and all that now, I mean, he just bought up all these bomb sites and turned them into car. The thing is, you could easily break your suspension on some of the potholes in them because they were literally bomb sites,
They were, and you never knew also whether you'd get about 4 punctures.
No, exactly, that's right.
There's all sorts of bits of broken glass.
That's right, yeah. No, bane of your life parking.
Well,
and
I'm sure people are terribly concerned about your worries about your fastback Mercedes car.
Yeah, well, it should be.
A couple of people have asked whether there was any sort of afters from the events of last night.
No, there wasn't. No.
There's been another event going on.
Yeah, what is it? What's happening?
It appears as though there's been some kind of a burglary or a break-in or something like that.
What?
There's a couple of police officers.
Where?
Outside.
Sorry, what have they broken into?
Not this building, but I think the one next door.
Oh, not a car then?
Not a car,
oh,
no.
Good.
Well, not
so my car's
no.
not been
well,
broken into.
I couldn't tell if your car had been broken into. It looks all right.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Well, that's...
Have you got anything worth stealing?
Say again?
Have you got anything worth stealing?
Well, my car alone is worth stealing. I mean, so I hope, they wouldn't have broke in.
I've just been told what's actually happened.
Yeah, what's happened?
Apparently the security guard locked himself out.
Oh, what, next door?
Yeah.
What a complete plank.
And he's had to get the locksmith round to reopen the door for him.
No, what honestly, what a complete idiot.
Yeah.
And we're working next to these people.
Thank goodness we haven't got a security guard like that.
Yeah.
That would never happen to our guy.
No, thank God our chap's on the ball.
Yeah.
Our chap's on the ball.
Nothing gets past him.
Nothing gets past him at all. Listen, a chap died recently, and I know this because it was in one of my journals. His name was Sir Christopher Bland.
Death Weekly.
Death Weekly, Sir Christopher Bland.
Sir Christopher Bland, I know that name.
Well, he was head of British Telecom, he was a BBC chairman for
I was going to say, was he not a BBC chairman?
Yeah, he was, and he was apparently very successful. But one thing he had an obsession
It's not a great
about,
name, is it?
No, it's not really. It's Christopher Bland. Well, he came from a great family, Dragoon Guards, like his father and all that kind of stuff. Went to a great school and then Oxford or Cambridge University. I can't remember which one. But he had made loads and loads of money, by the way, with the privatisation of places like LWT and all that kind of stuff. In television and all that.
Yeah.
But he had an obsession with to-do lists. And
you've got a bit of that. I mean,
no,
you like to have to-do lists.
This guy, I read his obituary. I think obituaries are fascinating about people's lives. And this to-do list, he would carry around with him all the time.
Yeah.
And in fact,
he'd have to constantly update it, wouldn't he?
Well, he had a collection of his favourite to-do lists.
Right.
And when he was a big sort of business mogul and all that, he'd write down all the to-do things he had to do when he took over a new business and then tick them off one by one, which might take years, but then have it framed and put into his study at home.
Really?
The way he solved these problems on his to-do list. But he had to-do lists all over the place. Do you have a to-do list?
Not really. The only time I would ever make that kind of a list is if I'm, say, travelling somewhere and I need to make sure that all the things that I need to take with me are ready to be taken with me.
Yes.
And sometimes I would put a to-do list together before we did maybe a live show.
Yes.
To make sure I had, certain props and certain things that I'd have to bring with me, my sunglasses, particular pair of shoes, that kind of thing. But not on a general basis. I have no to-do list at all.
I do one every morning. That's how
I said that, and you denied it.
But I mean, I'm not obsessed by them.
What does your today to-do list say?
Well, I haven't done it. I'll do it when I get home.
Well, what will it say?
What will it say?
Yeah.
Do.
Do what?
Yeah, well, I've got loads of things to do. No. I've got to talk
Go to Wetherspoons.
I've got to talk to people in Australia. About our project there.
All right.
I've got to talk to people in Greece because I'm going to a wedding in the summer.
Oh, you're going to go, are you?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
I've got to talk to.
You better get your sun cream bought as well.
That's right. Yeah, I've got to talk to people who've got to organise the Greece trip and the flights and all that kind of stuff. Right. What else have I got to do? I've got to. Oh, I tell you, I've got to do
food.
It's the end of the month, so there's an accountancy issue, isn't it? End of the month, so that's a to do as well. You know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. There's an awful lot to do, actually.
Yeah.
I've just remembered there is.
Right.
In fact, I don't even want to go home now because there's too much to do when I get there. I'm telling you.
This is Talk Sport.
Fixed it this time, Gromit. Right-o, 2 full English breakfasts coming up. Scrambled eggs, eh, lad? Ah! Who turned out the lights?
Do you like Wallace and Gromit?
I do like Wallace and Gromit,
yeah. Yeah, I think it's great.
The problem is they didn't make enough programmes. There's only about 4, isn't
Well,
there?
they made sort of short films, basically, didn't they?
Well, The Wrong Trousers. I remember that one.
Yeah, there's Wrong Trousers,
Yeah, and then what was the one with the vicious, nasty dog that was bullying everybody?
Well, there was one with a penguin, wasn't there?
One was a penguin.
Was that The Wrong Trousers?
It might have been The Wrong Trousers.
Yeah.
They were fantastic.
There was a Grand Day Out. There was a Grand Day Out.
Grand Day Out, remember that, yeah. Didn't they go on a spaceship to Mars?
That was the one they went to the moon, yeah, because they thought it was made of cheese.
That's right, yeah. Anyway,
and then there was the Were Rabbit, wasn't there?
The Were Rabbit, that's right, yeah. And that was all Nick Park, wasn't it?
It was Nick Park.
Nick Park, yeah.
And then it spun off into Shaun the Sheep.
Shaun the Sheep, that's right, remember that, yeah. But I thought they were brilliant, and I still watch them if they're on at Christmas and that sort of thing.
They are good, yeah.
Because they're so clever. But anyway, look, the reason we played that clip about eggs for breakfast, which of course I never have.
Well, you said you had quiche the other day, though, which kind of threw everyone that listens to this show. Because after all the stuff you've said about how you never eat eggs,
yes,
and you hate eggs,
yes,
you said you had quiche.
I did have quiche.
Well, that's got eggs in it.
Well, okay, loads of things got eggs in it. I mean, I like.
But I mean, quiche is like an egg flan.
I like.
It's not just got eggs in it.
I love a sponge cake, and that's got eggs in it.
Obviously.
But
that's not the same.
But there's an awful lot of pastry in quiche. I mean, they have a very thick.
They have pastry, but the internal workings of a quiche are basically egg.
Okay, maybe I can take that, but I certainly can't take eggs, and I've never eaten an egg because it just.
Well, you have if you've had quiche. Honestly,
Mike, stop contradicting me. Well, I have never eaten an egg.
Well, you've eaten a quiche.
Don't keep saying I have. Honestly, don't call black white.
Well,
I have never.
Well, what do you think's in a quiche?
What do you think is in a cake?
Yeah, but that's not the same.
I like Madeira cake. There are eggs in cake.
Yeah, but that's not the same.
Honestly, it's like hitting a blinking brick wall.
No, I know it is.
The quiche obviously has eggs in it, but it has a very thick pastry crust, and that's the only bits of it I eat. If you'd have listened to me,
so you only eat the crust?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, the reason we're playing Wallace and Gromit, right, is the fact that Peter Sallis, who is the voice of Wallace. Right? It's his birthday, and guess how old he is?
No idea.
96.
96?
96 is a huge age.
It is a huge age.
And I don't know if he does the voice anymore, if they came back and did it again.
I'm not sure if they're going to do any more, are they?
I don't know.
I wish they would.
He was, but despite the fact he's 96, right, do you know that he actually voiced, not only was he an actor in Last of the Summer Wine, but he also voiced Wallace and Gromit up till 6 years ago.
So he's not one of the 3 in the Last of the Summer Wine, is he?
He was, yeah.
Which one was he then?
He was the tall one, wasn't he?
The tall one.
Compo was the little scruffy fellow we all know with the hat and the coat which had holes in it.
Wasn't the tall one also in Porridge? Wasn't that the same guy?
Yeah, I think it was, yeah. And I think that was Peter Sallis.
Mr.
We'll get a
Barraclough.
picture of Peter Sallis up and be able to tell, won't we?
Mr. Barraclough.
Yeah, because Peter Sallis was the tall one with the glasses and the little moustache.
Yeah.
The other guy was the sort of non-entity type guy, kept the peace between the two. And then there was old Compo, who was Bill, I don't know who it was, Bill somebody, wasn't it?
Peter Sallis. Oh, I know that guy, yeah.
Right.
He's not the guy from
yeah, that's
Porridge.
him. That's him. He's not the guy from Porridge. He was the middle one, who I said was quite ineffective.
But but definitely one of the 3.
Oh yeah, definitely one of the 3.
Well, let's hope for us all then, if he's going to still work till the age of 96.
Well, what's hope for us all is he's still alive at 96, and the only reason I assume he's not working anymore is because at 96 there is no longer a Wallace and Gromit, and there's no longer a Last of the Summer Wine.
No, exactly.
By the way,
he was in an episode of Doctor Who in 1967. He was also in The Persuaders. Remember that show?
Yeah, I do, actually.
Tony Curtis.
Yeah.
And Roger Moore, wasn't it? The Persuaders, I think it was.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah. I'm not sure what role he played now. He might have been head of the agency or something. But what I was going to say was, I've recently been catching up on Coronation Street, which will not form part of Porky Vision tomorrow night.
Is Porky Vision going to be formed of any halcyon updates? Because people have been asking.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes, halcyon updates. Updates on Apple Tree Yard.
Apple Tree Yard, which people said, and I don't want to give too much away, but on Sunday it was not quite as full of horizontal refreshment as the previous week.
Well, it's
in fact, there was none, they said.
It's turning in a strange direction, I have to say, but there are programmes I've been watching which do involve a bit of horizontal refreshment. But anyway, look, what I was going to say is that Ken Barlow, played by Bill Roach.
Bill Roach, yes.
Had a stroke.
What, in real life?
No, in his character in the Coronation Street.
Right.
And so he's somebody talking like this.
Well, that's what happens.
Well, if you have a stroke,
sometimes with therapy, they can actually get your speech back to normal.
Well, he got back from the stroke problems in about 3 episodes or something like that, which of course is for dramatic purposes. But nevertheless, what I'm saying is, I think Bill Roach is now well into his 80s,
he must be, yeah.
And he's still doing Ken Barlow in Coronation Street.
Yeah.
And I have to say, looks fitter than me.
Yeah.
I mean, he does. He's a remarkable guy. Well, he really is.
It's true to say that now people in their 70s look an awful lot better than people in their 70s used to, if you know what I mean.
You know, in one generation, that's my generation, 60 has gone from being old and on the verge of retirement to a perfectly acceptable age when you should just, live your life like you have done for the last 30 years.
Yeah, and continue to work.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
And continue to work.
People should work into their 70s.
Well, if they can.
Keeps them alive.
Sometimes they're forced to retire because
Staying
they're in
alive.
jobs. Yeah, but sometimes they're in jobs where they will not be accepted to work that. I mean, for example, that woman you talked about in the police force, you can't maintain a job in the police until you're in your 70s. And the same with, probably the medical profession, the same with the fire business.
Like a lot of public authorities who years ago could afford to pay pensions, but now are bringing the burden of the nation upon the shoulders of the people of the nation, i.e. gilt-edged pensions. I think police officers can retire as early as sort of their early 50s if they've done 30 years.
Yeah, I think that's the point. If you've done the 30 years, it doesn't matter how old you are.
So if you're 22 or 23 and you start in the police force as a graduate, so to speak, and you rise to a rank of superintendent...
Well, what if you start when you're 18? You don't even go to university.
Well, supposing you go to university because then you get a better job with a better salary, right? And you do 30 years till you're about 52, right?
Yeah.
And then you retire.
Then you're off.
Yeah, but you might be alive for another 35 years.
Yeah, but you go get another job. You go become a security consultant.
Of course you can, but what I'm saying is we're getting to the stage now where the pension, the time you are paid a pension, right, could be longer than the time you're actually in work earning that pension.
I know. Crazy.
We're going to go bankrupt.
It's crazy.
We're going to go bankrupt. If you know about economics like I do, I'm telling you.
Hey? You'll just have to pay more tax.
Oh, no, other people have to pay more tax.
That's another thing you should have done yesterday, by the way, because that was a tax deadline. January the 31st. I know some people might be listening to this thinking, "Oh, I've forgotten to pay my tax."
No, I've paid all my taxes.
Well, I'm just saying that the 31st of January is a date for when you normally pay your tax.
I've been aware of that for years.
Well, that's good
because my financial and tax affairs are in very good shape.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Chris says this. Speaking of fires, all of the original Wallace and Gromit characters were destroyed in a fire at Nick Park's studio. I remember that.
I remember that
as well. It was down in Bristol, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was down in Bristol. So all the plastic models and all that melted, didn't they?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yes.
Terrible situation.
Yeah, it's a terrible situation.
So we still haven't decided on the Porky quiz for this week, then?
Eh?
We still haven't decided on the Porky quiz.
We'll decide that before the end. Right, now,
we keep saying that, but it's nearly the end.
Ian here in Shenzhen. Is he a regular?
Shenzhen, yes, he's in China, yeah.
Yeah, Shenzhen.
One of our fans in China.
He says, Classic Porky gives Peter Sellers the big build-up, then calls in the non-entity guy. Well, all I meant was that of the three in Last of the Summer Wine, he was the one who I thought was, had the least sort of, least impressive presence in the three guys in that. That's all I'm saying, okay?
Yes. Now, a couple of other observations. One from Lyle, who was talking about one of his parking problems, right? He says, try living in LA, where if you find a parking meter, it's for 1 hour only. They mark your tyres and you have to roll your car each hour or move.
You have to what?
Roll your car.
What, move it to another space?
No, I think he means move it just in the space so that it looks as if you've moved it from the original position.
Yeah, but the problem is these days all these parking guys are equipped with cameras.
Yeah,
and they take a picture of every vehicle that they come across.
That's what I mean.
And if they go back after the designated 2 hours in this town and they find you still there, they book you anyway.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is that if, for example, he's saying that you park in one particular spot, and they mark where you've parked with a piece of chalk, you can then maybe get an extra hour by moving it a bit further forward. So
what on earth is the point of that?
Well, maybe they don't have cameras.
Sounds mad.
Does it?
But of course, that's officialdom for you, and that's what they do, isn't it? Right, now, then what else we got here?
From Jay, he says, Porky says, I don't do a list. And shortly afterwards says, I do a list every morning.
Yeah, well, I wasn't sure what sort of list you were talking about, to be honest.
Well, how many lists do you do? You do a to-do list, right?
Yeah.
And you also do a marking of your day, right? I don't know whether that's a list or not.
Yes.
But that might be a list.
Well, I also have a long-term list.
Long-term?
Yes. Here, look.
What have you got on the top of the long-term list?
Well,
staying alive.
No. For instance, I keep asking you when are you going to have your holidays this August so I can plan my year and all this kind of stuff. Well, that's on my long-term list.
That'll be my list, not your list.
No, it's on my list because it affects me.
Okay.
Because believe it or not...
What else have you got on your list that affects you that's got to do with me?
Well, the fact that you are soon taking off, aren't you, to go to America for a week.
Well, I'm going to visit my mother.
Yes, that's right.
Because she's about to be 93.
Yeah, because you think your mother's more important than me.
Yeah, she is, actually.
Yeah, I thought you'd say that. Right, Mark Hannon.
I know that you find that hard to believe.
Mark Hannon says, you're all right, Porky.
I don't think I'd want to do a show with her, though, mind you.
No, of course not, no. Mark Hannon, you're all right, Porky. Washing machines do play music when they are finished. Old MG must have an ancient washing machine. So there, okay?
No, I haven't
got an ancient washing machine.
No, I haven't actually got an ancient washing machine. I just haven't got one that plays a tune. I've got one that makes a beeping sound.
Yeah, no.
And it happens to be a Bosch. So that's why I was interested in which Bosch you have.
Okay.
Because if it's that brilliant... I mean, if I want to play a bit of Schubert, I don't want it coming out of my washing machine.
Yeah, okay.
I prefer it to come out of a speaker or, a stereo system.
Yes, music makes the world go round. Now, Karen's dad says, great interview, re-Trump guys. He is a nutter who's likely to suffer the same fate as JFK. That's a terrible thing to say, honestly. But Karen's dad says, great show.
Yes.
See,
there's a few people who were not happy with the interview, saying that, this guy's pro-Trump. He's not pro-Trump at all. He just was representing the views of a lot of people in the security business.
The guy who came on our show?
The guy who came on our show, yeah.
He was very anti-Trump.
Well, he wasn't anti-Trump or pro-Trump. He was just talking about the business of terrorism and the way that things work.
He called him a bigot.
Well, there are people who believe that he is a bigot.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He was not pro-Trump. He said the man's a bigot, the man's going to cause huge problems.
Well, you don't think
man's going to bring terror down on our shoulders.
You don't think taking the word of somebody who's worked in the intelligence community for 30 years is worth listening to?
I do think he's worth listening to, but you're trying to contradict what he said. He was definitely anti-Trump. There was no doubt about it.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll take the view of the millions of people who listened to him. He was very anti-Trump. He thought that his policies on the immigration ban were entirely wrong.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people would agree with that.
Yeah, well...
That's why so many people are demonstrating about it.
OK. Gordo here says, can't wait for Postman Pork. That will be tomorrow night, will it?
No, that will be Thursday
night, OK.
Well, you do it tomorrow night if you want.
No, Thursday night's fine. And then Maxwell of the Silver Hammer, 20,000 bars, Porky. Thought for a minute you were talking about your normal Saturday afternoon.
Yes, quite. Now, Ask Porky's coming up next, and then after that, we'll have to figure out what the quiz is going to be.
Appropriate. If people are whinging that there's, too much influence from the Beatles again, then we will consider talking to the production team to see whether or not we need to vary that, OK?
I don't think there's any need to do that. Now, we've got loads and loads of great questions, many of them on Facebook, some of them sent in on Twitter as well, and a couple have come in on regular sort of text as well, which of course is 1089.
Let's go.
We'll try and do as many as possible.
Yes.
Keeping it as brief but as interesting as possible as well. How about this from, who should we start with? From Pete, he says, as it's Super Bowl on Sunday, should we swap Porky Vision for a Super Bowl preview this week?
No, we should definitely not. And I'll tell you why, for two reasons. Firstly, I don't know enough about American football or Super Bowl. And secondly, I have a concerted belief that it drives most of, or a big percentage of the millions of our listeners to distraction with boredom.
Here's one from Mac. He says, is it time to scrap the winter transfer window? It gets more boring by the year.
I've never been in favour of the transfer window. In fact, when we saw the Crystal Palace chairman last week, Steve Parrish, one of the questions I wanted to put to him was, are you a supporter or none? But we got into a discussion about China. We didn't have time to talk to him. But I just think it's a complete waste of resources and time. And I wish we could go back to the day when, suddenly out of the blue, we were told that Andy Cole had left Newcastle United and gone to Manchester United in December on an £18 million deal, a record at the time.
Right. Here's one from Damon who says, I'm off to Amsterdam this weekend. Any advice on where you're recommending I should go?
Amsterdam's a great city. You can go to the red light district without feeling seedy, excuse me, or, that you're creeping around brothels and all that kind of stuff, because the whole city is one of complete tolerance in your social activities. The cafe bars, I don't know if you've still got the cafe bars where you can go in and smoke a bit of a joint or something like that.
Well, they changed the laws
rules
on that, didn't they? I think they made it more difficult, for tourists.
Yes, I think so. I think you have to register or license or something, or buy a license or something like that. But nevertheless, it is a fun city, Amsterdam, and there's no point in me directing you to one place or another. It's just a great place to go.
John says this on Facebook. Dear Porky,
Take a tour on the canal, by the way.
I'm thinking about entering a white-collar boxing match for charity. Any tips from the Butlins boxing champ on how to sting like a butterfly and float like a bee?
I wouldn't do it unless you absolutely understand what you're getting into, because last time I fought, when I was 18, from my championship days of Butlins, that was 12 years on, I hadn't realised how painful it is to get punched in the face by a bloke who's about a foot taller than you and wielding a glove on the end of his fist. It is shocking, it's painful, you can end up injured, and seriously, unless you go to a proper gym and get yourself trained to receive punishment, you're mad. You realise that if Mike Tyson hit you just casually, could break your neck. That's the sort of force that a human body can exert through a fist. Don't do it.
Here's one from Sesh. He says, Porky, I'm 41. I have to wear glasses for the first time. They arrive next week. Shall I pretend I don't need them and throw them away, or man up and wear them?
Well, I don't know what you mean by man up. Glasses are an essential part now of a sophisticated wardrobe. I mean, crikey, glasses have been in vogue ever since Buddy Holly wore glasses, very, very like old MG's here, because they're the same sort of thick frame glasses, OK? So there's no shame wearing glasses at all. I remember when I was sort of in my teens, I was told I had to wear glasses, and I went and looked at the option, which was contact lenses. But contact lenses, quite frankly, are something that frightened me. You get bladderated one night, you go to bed, you don't take out your contact lenses. Result, molten plastic eyes the next morning. Don't do it.
Molten plastic eyes. Tom says, who would Porky choose to give the most cutting, nasty and vindictive eulogy at his funeral, excluding MG, of course, and who would he choose to give the most glowing eulogy? Of yourself, I guess.
Well, not really. Of people still alive, I would give a glowing eulogy to somebody who I thought had contributed hugely in life. So, what am I going to say? Obviously Paul McCartney, but I hope he's with us for many decades yet. As for vindictiveness, I'm not really very vindictive about anybody on earth. And frankly, I think when somebody's dead, why bother attacking them?
Martin says, Porky, I'm going to Cancun in May. Need to find out what my girlfriend's ring size is because I want to ask her to marry me.
Yeah.
What kind of rat-like cunning do I need to find out the size?
That is absolutely easy. It's absolutely easy, OK? What you do is you say, darling, I love you so much, and you press your palm against hers. You see what I mean? Like a high five, but a romantic high five. Oh, come to me, darling. You see what I mean? So you lift up both your palms. She lifts hers up, right? Then you put your hands against each other. You will then be able to judge the circumference of her fingers compared to yours.
Really?
Yes, oh yes, yeah, no problem at all.
Sure this is the best way to do it?
This is the best way to do it, without a shadow of a doubt, right? The only other way of doing it is to say to her, and this is a cunning trick which I've seen exercised in other places. And you come in with a cake box and you say, "Hello, darling, I've got you a pineapple sponge. Right. It's your birthday or something like that." And what you do is you tell her to feel how soft and gentle it is, and then for a bit of a laugh, you push her hand into the sponge.
Right.
Okay? And then you say, "Oh, I'm sorry, darling," And
that seems a bit elaborate.
And then you don't eat the sponge cake; you take it away as evidence of the size of her fingers.
Yeah. Or you could just take one of the other rings that she's got somewhere.
Well, no, because that in itself could be leading to suspicion.
Yes. Okay. All right. Now, Nina sends one in about oral hygiene, I suppose you might say. Ooh. She says, "Porky, you've recently undergone some dental work. So have I, and it's very painful. How did you deal with the pain?"
Well, you just have to let the pain recede, because the pain, in my view, is because of the attack on that part of your anatomy, i.e. your gums and your jaw and all that, and it just goes after a while. What I would say, and I don't know what sort of dental treatment you've had, but I was told by my dentist, and you have to do it, he gives you these little brushes, and that's a sort of, a pack that comes with the treatment, but after that, go to Boots and keep buying them, and you must use them between your teeth, because if you don't, certainly for the first year, you can get infections in that part of your gum.
Are these those little tiny brushes?
Yeah, little tiny brushes, which you put in the... You see, you've got to remember that these new teeth are made of porcelain, so they don't spread out along your gum. They're there forever. There are gaps at the bottom, and there's no doubt that when you're eating, when you're masticating, food will get there. You must use those brushes all the time.
John says this, Porky, why don't you get a snob alarm that you can sound when MG starts banging on about your love of plain food, Borough Market, and how awful warm water oysters are?
Yeah, well,
I don't know why he's taking it against me.
No, I don't have any problem with it. What I do object to is the lack of tolerance. MG thinks he's a superior being to me because he buys exotic foods,
That's not true.
Which I don't enjoy eating. He takes them home and he cooks them, and he puts them out on Twitter, shows you pictures of them. They all look the same to me, but I accept that they are, exotic recipes and all that kind of stuff, but I don't enjoy eating them. And then he mocks me for eating fish fingers. Why? Millions of people that eat fish fingers.
I eat fish fingers as well.
So that means there are millions of listeners...
I just mock you for eating them all the time.
...who eat fish fingers are being mocked as imbeciles and people who lack any sort of sophistication. Simple as that.
Not true at all.
Next
I had
one,
fish fingers last weekend.
Next one, please.
Here's one from Ikram, who says, thanks to my Ask Porky advice earlier, my wife has decided we should leave our life in Marbella and move back to London. I'm very sad.
Further to what, sorry?
He must have asked some earlier advice.
Right, okay.
About whether he should stay in Marbella.
Right, okay.
And his wife and he were listening to the advice you gave them.
Okay.
And they're now, as a result, moving back to London, leaving Marbella.
Well, you've got to sort that out, mate. That's what relationships are all about. If you're into a relationship, most of it has to be give and less of it has to be take. A former boss of mine, Sir Larry Lamb, no longer with us, said that despite the fact he rose to the top in journalism, was the editor of several national newspapers, the hardest job he ever had in life was keeping his marriage together because you have to work at it much harder than you have to work at your job. I'm afraid that's a problem you're going to have to solve. However, personally, I'd much rather live in Britain than live in Marbella.
Rick says this, having taken advice that Porky gave me over December, I'm now living and working in Mexico City.
You're right.
You're obviously having a big effect on where people live in the world. He says, it seems an interesting time to be here, but I'm being urged not to consume American products. So no Porky's new sponsors, Uber, no Starbucks, Walmart, etc. I would like to please my new Mexican girlfriend and friends, etc., but it's more expensive and less convenient to go Mexican all the time.
Yeah.
Have you got any tips, Senor Porky Ferros?
Well, not really. If you're living in Mexico City, mate, then you're going to do as the Romans do. You know what I mean? If you live in Rome, you have to live like a Roman. So I've never been to Mexico City. I've been to Mexico, been to cities in Mexico, but not Mexico City. But I do understand it's a massive, great metropolis. It would not suit me, A, for the heat, B, for the culture, and C, for the fact that, quite frankly, it's not my homeland, and I want to be in my homeland.
How about this from Richard? What would be the tabloid headline and subtitle of your life story so far?
Oh, it would be something like Success. Would be the headline, and the deck below it would be, how I achieved how I achieved what's the word, like when you've got a complete satisfaction in life? Mantra. Nirvana. How I achieved Nirvana by the Porkmeister.
Okay. How about this one from Josh? He says, me and my partner are going for a weekend away in Portsmouth. As you're an expert in all things to do with Portsmouth, what's the best things to do down there and the best places to eat?
You head for Old Portsmouth, and that's not being unkind to kind of New Portsmouth, if you see what I mean. But there are two places in Portsmouth to go, and they're very close to each other. One is Gunwharf Quays, which is a very big shopping location, everything there that you could possibly want for yourself and your partner, and then push on from there down to Old Portsmouth, where there are a number of delightful old inns, old pubs, nice restaurants, and altogether sort of, very port-like or, seaside-like locations, which you will revel in. It's a lovely place.
Good for fish, no doubt.
Yes.
How about this from Sylvain?
Yes.
My girlfriend doesn't want to come to the Two Mics live. What should I do?
Well, that's entirely up to herself, but if I were you, I'd try and convince her. And I tell you what you can do. You can buy a copy of the Two Mics Live in Edinburgh DVD, still for sale on the Two Mics website. I'm not using that as an advert, but I'm saying if you want to convince her to come with you to a live one, then you can show her a DVD of one we did last year and the year before that. We've got one for that as well. And believe me, by the time she's seen 10 minutes of that, she will be begging you to take her to a Two Mics Live.
Stop showing it to her. Stephen says, as an avid Hull City fan, do I blindly stick by the team and keep going to the games, knowing the owners are taking them to the dogs, or do I stay away, depriving them of vital support and put pressure on the Alams?
Well, I'm sorry, but I mean, you just have to stick with it. And do you know what I would do? Seriously, I'd get in touch with some of the fans who represent Blackpool and Blackburn, who jointly protested, didn't they, last weekend, against the owners of their clubs, because they both feel that their owners are driving their clubs into the ground, and see if you've got any common ground. The problem is, if you're a fan and a lifelong fan, born a fan of your club, you are a captive to the culture of that club and to supporting it, and you just have to fight against those who you feel are letting your club down.
And that was Ask Porky. There'll be more of the same time next week. This
Indeed.
is Talk Sport.
But baby, you and I are not the same. You say you like the sun, I like the rain. But still, before we go do it all again, you better catch your own train.
This is Talk Sport. We are the Two Mics. There will be a podcast coming out a little bit later on. What I should say also is that yesterday we told you the story of a little boy called Leo,
yes,
who's in desperate need of an operation over in the United States of America. And Becky Davis, who's one of our listeners, alerted us to the story initially. We put out some links to his GoFundMe page last night after the show, and I'm very happy to say that an awful lot of people have donated money. I've just also now on Facebook shared her post, which is Unite for Leo on World Cancer Day on Saturday the 4th of February. And in that posting on Facebook, you'll be able to see places where you can go and give money. Basically, he needs a brain operation, and they're trying to raise £150,000 in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
And are we going to retweet it tonight so I can retweet it as well?
I will put the link out to the Facebook page as well. And we'll just keep that going, because as much help as we can obviously offer, the better.
Excellent. Can I just tell you about something I saw today, which has terribly concerned me, and it will concern you and concern our millions of listeners. I have the telly on most of the day if I'm inside, and of course today was transfer day deadline. It was very dull because actually nothing much happened, to be honest. And
most of the sort of decent transfers happened earlier in the month.
Yeah, of course they did. Yeah. But anyway, it's obviously something that's got to be covered because it's a major part of the football calendar. However, in these torrid times, you're always turning over to the news channels to find out what's happening in the world with Trump and all that kind of stuff. And one story which Sky, News did today, and it was a terrible, terrible story, and a lot of people are now picking up on it. It's going to be, you'll find it in some of the newspapers tomorrow, is this shocking trade in baby chimpanzees.
Oh, yes, funnily enough, I heard a bit about that on the way home yesterday.
It's so shocking, Mark, you can't believe it.
I think it's a BBC investigation.
Is it a BBC investigation?
So,
OK, well, Sky certainly picked up, and if it was the BBC, then credit the BBC for alerting the world to it. Actually, you're absolutely right. I see a credit here. The Chimp Smugglers is on the BBC News channel on Saturday at 9:30pm. So try and have a look at that, because it was. It may have been on the BBC. I saw it. I'm sorry. I thought I saw it on Sky. But anyway, I'd look at all the channels all the time. But the essence of it is that you've got a little baby chimp in a wooden box. Right. But to get the chimp away from its family, they'd have to kill up to 9 adult chimpanzees because they are so protective towards their babies. And they shoot them. They shoot them in the head.
Are these chimps already in captivity anyway?
No, they are not. This is the whole point. Now, the point is that these chimps are then smuggled out of, Africa or whichever country they've been stolen from. And they're then smuggled abroad, and they are literally the playthings of rich people. Rich people want them to put on their yachts. So you've got billionaires with yachts.
You've just got a monkey sitting there, or a chimp.
Well, a chimpanzee, which is, very humanoid, like a little humanoid baby and all that kind of stuff. And of course, the chimps are terrified. They've got no parents, all that kind of stuff. And It's absolutely deplorable on two grounds. Firstly, you kidnap a little baby chimp, which has the mental age of a 3 or 4 year old child, so it's completely confused, doesn't know what's going on, but it has much more sort of bodily muscle power than a human baby, so it's running around frightened and scared.
But it also has quite a lot of emotional intelligence.
Of course it does.
Like that, doesn't it?
Of course it does. And it has no parents. It has no no members of its tribe or anything like that. It's absolutely shocking and appalling. And I do hope that if people start looking at this and then see this programme, Chimp Smugglers, BBC News Channel on Saturday at 9 p.m, we can raise the alarm on this one and really get going, because it's absolutely hideous to see. Why would how can you possibly, get involved in that sort of business? So cruel, so inhuman, so horrible.
It is. And I mean, there are some parts of the world where, I mean, the friends of mine are particularly active in the dog world.
Yes.
And some of the things that you hear that they do in China and other parts of the world like that with dogs, where one was telling, I don't want to make it too grisly, but apparently they, in some parts of China, they like to torture the dog before they kill it to eat it with a blowtorch, right? Because they believe that if the dog is more terrified when it dies, the meat tastes better.
That's disgusting.
Isn't that awful?
I would shoot people like that. Yeah. Honestly, I'd turn the blowtorch on them.
Yeah.
Tie them up to a wall, take their trousers off and blowtorch them in a place where it might actually feel quite,
We wouldn't recommend
harmful.
that, of course, for anybody, but it is hideous.
Yeah.
Talking of animals, though, have you seen there's a great picture in all the papers this morning
of
the birds that are actually on a plane?
Unbelievable.
Have you seen this?
Individual seats for the birds. Is it a Saudi prince, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a Saudi prince who's moving a load of falcons around the world.
Unbelievable.
Basically. And so he's got an entire plane, which looks like, a plane as good as, say, a 757 or something like that.
I know, yeah.
And all these falcons just kind of sitting on the seats.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some great headlines. What's the in-flight movie?
Yeah, I know, but like you say, the amount of wealth in the world, which is concentrated on a few people, is not something that I ever dwell on, because I believe in the free market and I believe in people's ability. But when you look at the way some people spend their money, and then you look at the deprivations of other people, it runs into millions in other parts of the world. We have a very imbalanced world, don't we? Without getting so,
I'm afraid
without getting too theoretical about it.
I'm afraid so. Now, another big issue of the day you may want to know about is Doctor Who. Now, I thought Doctor Who had sort of been
Is this
stopped.
Mr. Capaldi?
Mr. Capaldi has finally decided he's leaving after 3 years.
Yes.
I don't think he was a particularly successful Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my kids used to like watching it, but with him, they kind of stopped. But you'll be delighted to know that the lovely Ms. Harriet Harman is telling the BBC the next Doctor Who should be a woman.
Yeah, and I tell you who's favourite in those stakes, the woman who was in Call the Midwife.
Oh, no, really?
Yeah. What's it?
Miranda, whatever her name is.
Miranda Hart.
She'd be awful as a Doctor Who.
Well, I've never quite seen the appeal, and I'm not saying that she's not a very talented lady and all that, but I mean, some comedians you like and some you don't.
Yes.
I like Tommy Cooper, but...
you don't make a very good Doctor Who either.
No, he wouldn't make a good Doctor Who now, obviously. But that's the problem, isn't it? When you've got a set formula in this day and age, people tinker with it. Like the Sherlock Holmes thing.
Yeah.
Now, I recorded the episodes of Sherlock Holmes with Cumberbatch.
Yes.
And it was rubbish. Yeah. And particularly the last one, which nobody can make head nor tail of. Oh, by the way, I've been reminded that when I was talking about Portsmouth and Old Portsmouth, why didn't you mention Portsmouth Dockyard, HMS Victory and the Mary Rose? Well,
to be fair, he was asking for places to go and eat.
Yes, that's right. But, I mean, things to do, certainly. And what you do is you buy a ticket to get into the dockyard. It's got, like, 8 coupons on it, Yeah. And there's all sorts of places you can go. You can go to Victory. You can certainly go to the Mary Rose. You can go to the National Naval Museum and all sorts of other attractions. And that, yes, is very well worth going to.
Okay.
Recommend it to everybody.
Lyle says this. What about a Porky quiz on Porky's favourite movie, Top Gun? We've already done that, I think.
Yeah, we have done,
I predict 2 out of 10.
Yeah.
And Jay says this week's Porky quiz should be about you, Mike. See how much he knows you.
Yeah.
And that's about me. I don't think you want to do a quiz about me.
No, you've hidden too many aspects of your life away anyway, so I wouldn't know.
Absolute rubbish.
The other people around know more about you than I do.
Shocking. Now, what about your friend Sebastian Coe, Lord Coe, as he's known, right?
Yes.
So I've been telling you that there's something not quite right about the business of what did he know and when did he know it.
Yes.
There's a piece on the back pages this morning saying that new evidence has left Lord Coe open to accusations that he did mislead MPs over when he knew about the athletics doping scandal.
Yeah.
because he's previously said he wasn't aware of specific allegations, right?
Yeah.
And so the story is not going away.
It says in one report his deputy faces expulsion.
Is this Nick Davis?
Yeah. Now, did Nick Davis used to have anything to do with the journalistic world?
There was a Nick Davis. In fact, there's two Nick Davises who were journalists.
Yes.
There's one who worked for The Guardian.
And one who worked for The Mirror, wasn't it?
Worked for The Mirror.
Yeah.
And I think both of them are separated, completely separate individuals. And I don't think either of them is this guy.
Because the one at The Mirror was like some sort of investigative...
He was.
Investigative journalist.
An interesting character.
Didn't he get involved in all sorts of chicanery?
He did.
Yeah.
I
thought he did.
There were certain allegations made against him.
Yes.
And he had a nickname, I think, which gave away the fact that people thought he was a bit of a double dealer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's probably best not to go too much into that because I think he's still around.
For a family show?
Yeah. No, it wasn't so much that. It was more about financial...
chicanery.
Chicanery, as you might say.
These things happen.
Yeah, they do.
But it says here that Sebastian Coe's former right-hand man at the IAAF, what's that, the International Amateur Athletics Federation, has been expelled from the organisation after admitting...
For taking a bribe.
Lying to investigation about receiving a £30,000 to make ill business.
It is a very murky
business,
old
yeah.
So here we go. Nick Davis is a British investigative journalist, writer and documentary maker. Now, that's the guy who works for The Guardian and The Observer.
Yes.
And he's often won lots and lots of awards. The other Nick Davis has kind of disappeared from trace.
Right, okay.
So I'm not really quite sure what happened to him.
Right, okay.
The one who worked for The Mirror.
Okay.
You know?
Just to remind people that Liverpool's draw last night prevented them from losing 4 consecutive games at Anfield. Which last happened in 1923.
Well, yeah, but they still failed to win a game there recently, right? So they've still only won one game in 2017.
Yes, that's right. They have, yeah. Well, you know, every club has a slump and all that kind of stuff. Everton play Stoke tomorrow night. Now, I tell you what, in the old days, if you were going to the old Britannia Stadium on a Wednesday night in February, in fact, February, you know, a rainy old night in February, it was a grim prospect.
Well, they still use that phrase, don't they? You know, about players coming from Spain. Well, how will they play in Stoke on a wet Wednesday night?
Yeah, and it is a wet Wednesday night tomorrow. And apparently we're in for storms this week. I've seen the weather report, followed by a frozen month.
A frozen month,
Frozen month. February's going to be a frozen month, okay?
Yeah, well,
do you know that?
I don't mind that. I mean, my kids would love some snow, to be honest. Because they haven't really had any. They've had one day of snow, and the sledging capabilities have been zero, basically.
I used to love snow as a kid, I really did, and because I grew up in the north of England, we used to get it. I remember as a kid, we used to get, like, snow drifts and things. We used to be sent home from school when it started snowing.
Well, I'm sure up in your part of the world, they still get a lot of that.
Yeah, because if you stayed at school till 4 o'clock, which is a normal, you know, tipping out time for schools, you couldn't get home because the roads were... snowdrifts across the road. Your parents couldn't come and pick you up.
No.
Terrible
I found
thing.
some info on Nick Davis. He is still alive. He got fired by Maxwell. Wrote a couple of books about Maxwell as well.
That's right, yeah.
So an interesting character. We may see if we can find him and get him on the show
Indeed.
at some point. That's it, though, for us for tonight. Remember that song, right?
Brilliant song. That was from my disco era.
Brilliant song.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't call it brilliant.
Yeah, Kung Fu fighting.
Yeah. Who's your part?
Oh,
do you remember his name?
Yeah, well, I don't remember his name, but it was some name like sort of Ika Kuka or something like that. You know what I mean?
Carl Douglas, actually.
Carl Douglas, yeah, that's right.
It wasn't Ika Kuka or anything.